quickly disbanded, and Sid hightailed it back to London to be with Nancy, where they were able to devote all of their energy and all of the money Sid made on the road to finding and doing heroin. Sid's solo career was now a priority, second to shooting dope, but still a priority. So in a drug-induced flash of inspiration, it was decided Nancy would be Sid's manager. There's a lot of footage of the couple during this time, sitting around in their underwear, nodding off, making out. As artist-manager relationships go, it's highly unusual. But for a couple of full-blown junkies, it's standard fare. But Sid didn't lack for female attention. His mom was always around. She'd come by their flat delivering care packages of jujubes and syringes. As mother-son relationships go, this too was highly unusual. But again, for full-blown junkies, standard fare. However, London was becoming a drag. Maybe it was the lack of excitement now that the Pistols were broken up. Maybe it was the junkie who turned up dead on their apartment floor. Or maybe, from Nancy's perspective, it was the smothering presence of Sid's overly affectionate and increasingly dependent mom. Whatever the reason, Sid's solo career needed tending to, and the States seemed like the place to be. Sid and Nancy took off for Manhattan, the West Side, to be precise, the Chelsea Hotel. In 1978, the Chelsea Hotel was already legend. It's where Andy Warhol shot Chelsea Girls. Bob Dylan wrote much of Blonde on Blonde there. Leonard Cohen wrote Chelsea Hotel No. 2 about the time he ran into Janis Joplin in the elevator and woke up in bed with her. It's where Sam Shepard convinced Patti Smith he was single and a drummer in a punk band so that she would sleep with him. Chelsea Guitars was down the block. Mother's was across the street. Lou Reed lived around the corner, and Max's Kansas City was just a short cab ride away. Yeah, for Sid and Nancy, in 1978, the Chelsea Hotel was the place to be. Plus, the Chelsea's first floor was the junkies' floor. And that's where Sid and Nancy lived, in room 100, and that's where Nancy Spungen would die. Heroin could be procured easily. Getting ahead in the music industry is tough stuff, and getting ahead in the music industry with a 2-gram-a-day habit in a Motel 10 is brutal. So having a dependable supply nearby was clutch. Nancy quickly began to make strides managing Sid. By September of '78, she had a string of high-paying East Coast gigs lined up at $3 to $4 grand a pop. His solo band was hot shit. Mick Jones from The Clash was on guitar, and the New York Dolls rhythm section was enlisted, which meant Nancy's former obsession, Jerry Nolan, would be along for the ride. Sid didn't mind, though. He and Nancy had a different kind of love by now. It was post-sexual, more maternal than on Fuego. Jealousy didn't enter into the equation. Sex was boring. Heroin was God. Music was a means to an end. Cash for much-needed dope. Jerry Nolan could come along. What did Sid care? At the end of the night, he'd be the one knotted out at Nancy's side no matter what. The gigs paid off. Nancy was flush, but scoring heroin was getting harder. Finding good dope in New York wasn't always easy. Sometimes, you had to head uptown into more dangerous, less-known territory and deal with really sketchy addicts along the way. I mean, what could you do? You couldn't complain to your regular dealer that his shit was, well, shit. You were likely to get cut. It was better to bite your tongue and take your business elsewhere. Nancy loved Sid. The last thing she wanted was for him to get stabbed scoring dope. So on October 10th, 1978, she bought him a Jaguar K11 knife for protection. It had a 5-inch blade that would end up in her stomach within a number of hours. Robinhood is an investing app that lets you buy and sell stocks, ETFs, options, and cryptos, all commission-free. While other brokerages charge up to $10 for every trade, Robinhood doesn't charge any commission fees, so you can trade stocks and keep all your profits. Plus, there's no account minimum deposit needed to get started, so you can start investing at any level. The simple, intuitive design of Robinhood makes investing easy for newcomers and experts alike. View easy-to-understand charts and market data, and place a trade in just 4 taps of your smartphone. You can also view stock collections, such as 100 most popular. With Robinhood, you can learn how to invest in the market as you build your portfolio. Discover new stocks, track your favorite companies, and get custom notifications for price movements so you never miss the right moment to invest. Robinhood is giving listeners of Disgraceland a free stock like Apple, Ford, or Sprint to help you build your portfolio. Sign up at disgraceland.robinhood.com. Robinhood is an investing app that lets you buy and sell stocks, ETFs, options, and cryptos, all commission-free. While other brokerages charge up to $10 for every trade, Robinhood doesn't charge any commission fees, so you can trade stocks and keep all your profits. Plus, there's no account minimum deposit needed to get started, so you can start investing at any level. The simple, intuitive design of Robinhood makes investing easy for newcomers and experts alike. View easy-to-understand charts and market data, and place a trade in just 4 taps of your smartphone. You can also view stock collections, such as 100 most popular. With Robinhood, you can learn how to invest in the market as you build your portfolio. Discover new stocks, track your favorite companies, and get custom notifications for price movements so you never miss the right moment to invest. Robinhood is giving listeners of Disgraceland a free stock like Apple, Ford, or Sprint to help you build your portfolio. Sign up at disgraceland.robinhood.com. There was no dramatic precursor to Nancy's murder, relatively speaking anyways. There was no fight, no breakdown, nothing hinting at premeditation. Sid and Nancy were in love. Their own version of love for sure, but love nonetheless. And they needed each other, like a needle needs a spoon. With Nancy minding Sid's career, there was at least some sort of professional horizon to look out onto after waking up from dope binges. And despite the current state of available heroin, Mr. and Mrs. Too Stoned to Fuck were at the time settled into their own routine, their own version of domestic bliss. So, like any other normal couple in the throes of love, they decided to throw a party in their room at the Chelsea. Except Sid and Nancy weren't a normal couple, and this was the Chelsea Hotel. Friends shuffled in and out. The main point of their presence was so Nancy could score drugs. She and Sid were hurting and on the verge of dope sickness. Nancy had called everyone looking for smack. No dice. The best she could do was convince her friend Rocket's Red Glare to come by with some synthetic morphine. The scene was dark. Unable to score dope, Sid had downed 30 Tuinals and couldn't move. Nancy kept the guests coming in, friends with drugs to spare and a few dealers, but nobody had any smack. The party broke up. Sid roamed the halls looking for a fix. Nothing. Back to the room. He and Nancy were alone. The pain was all consuming. The pills and booze added a haze but did little to numb the hurt. Sid felt it the worst. They tried soothing each other. On their bed, they were a tangled, junky mess. In each other's arms, taking turns moaning in agony, and in between barely audible mumbles, Sid faded in and out of consciousness. Their death pact was on their minds, the one where they'd promised to kill themselves if the other had died, so they could be buried next to each other in their leather jackets, jeans, and motorcycle boots. The pact would always come up in moments like these, when the pain got to be too much. Sid sweated out, mumbling incoherently. Nancy jabbered on and on. They should have gone uptown earlier to score when they had the chance. And where the fuck was Rocket's Red Glare with those pills? Jerry Nolan always had dope. This was somehow all that cunt Malcolm McLaren's fault. She wouldn't shut up. Words, words, more words. Sid came too. They lie face to face, still twisted up in pain. Sid was shirtless. Give me a fix scarred across his chest. Black jeans, half-inch bike chain, lock around his neck. There was the pain again. And there was his knife. He'd had it in his pocket or in his hand ever since Nancy had given it to him the day before. She was jonesing hard now, sweating in just her black panties and bra, near naked, talking non-stop. She would not shut up. Kill me now. Give me a fix. Sleep forever. No more pain. Sid couldn't think straight. Words, just words. More words. Sid did his best, but he understood little beyond the pain. Deep, agonizing pain. Nancy was pissed. More words. Sid didn't understand. The tangle turned to a tussle. There was the knife. Pain. Sharp pain. No more words. Silence. When Sid Vicious awoke, he found the love of his life, Nancy Spungen, dead on their bathroom floor. Her body crammed between the toilet and the sink in an upright position. Blood covered her knees and legs. Her knees, perpetually scarred, though, were not the source of the blood. It was the single stab wound in her abdomen, just below her belly button, from the 5-inch blade of Sid's knife. I stabbed her, but I didn't mean to kill her, he told police at one point. I loved her, but she treated me like shit. That sounds like a lot of smack. The truth is that love kills. You are now exiting Rikers Island Prison Complex, is what the sign says. But what you see is a sign that says you are now about to get high as fuck. Because you just made bail. Your mom and your friend, Peter Kotick, are waiting for you. They've arranged it so the first order of business is getting you stoned. Then there will be a party for you. And tomorrow, you got to get around to seeing that famous lawyer, F. Lee Bailey, that Mick Jagger has been secretly and generously paying for. Mick Jagger. Shit. That's what Sid Vicious was likely thinking on the first day of February, 1979, when he left Rikers Island Prison, the first day of the rest of his life that would only last, roughly, another 18 hours. In prison for 7 weeks, Sid straightened out. Sobriety cleans the mind. And with clarity, the ghost of Nancy came a-knocking. Sid was still reeling from the uncertainty of whether or not he did or didn't kill the love of his life. Imagine that. You wake up dazed from horse tranquilizers, and your girlfriend, your soulmate, your best friend, your business manager, hell, let's be real, the only woman who truly mothered you, is lying dead on the floor. And you don't think you killed her. I mean, why would you? You depended on her. You needed her. You loved her. When you were upset, you'd nurse at her breast. She'd call you baby boy, and you'd call her mama. Her death and your confusion haunted you. Did you do it? Did you kill her? How could you do it? How could you kill her? Though you often said you'd happily die with her, that stuff about the death pact that the two of you had was mostly nonsense, right? Something you talked about when the dope sickness got to be too painful. Wasn't it? Or was it? With Nancy on his mind, Sid was eager to reunite with the other love of his life, his main squeeze, heroin. The party was small but spirited. His new girlfriend, Michelle Robinson, was hosting some friends at her apartment in the village. Peter Kotick, Jerry Only from the Misfits, some others, and Sid's mom, who was busy fixing one off for Sid, his first shot of heroin after 7 weeks of detox in Rikers. Hold up. Let's take a minute to understand what's going on here. You're a mother. Your son was just let out of prison. He's about to go on trial for murdering his girlfriend. He's a heroin addict. The only good thing going for him right now is the fact that in being jailed for the last 7 weeks, he has kicked his heroin habit. It's out of his system. But you, being mom of the year, think for some reason that it's a good idea to immediately give him heroin. The fuck was Ann Beverly, Sid's mom, thinking? Sid didn't care. This wasn't unusual for their relationship. She'd been the worst of influences since he was in short pants, but now her shitty parenting wasn't the problem. Her shitty dope was. It was bunk. Sid injected it, but nothing. He was furious. Peter Kotick was dispatched to hit the streets to find real dope. Mom fail. Kodak scored, and his dope did the trick. Sid nearly OD'd. It was strong stuff. His friends revived him, but the party died out. Dope addicts know that the first hit after detox can be fatal. The trick is injecting the perfect amount, balancing enough to get high, but not enough to shock your system to death. That's what happened when Sid booted up that first time out of prison. Too much dope, too much good dope to be exact. He wanted more, but was too high to shoot himself up. He asked his girlfriend to do it, but she'd seen enough of this junkie harry-carry. So Sid's mom, Ann Beverly, entered the apartment bedroom where her son was sprawled out in need of a fix sometime in the early morning hours of February 2nd, 1979. For Sid, the heroin numbed the pain of missing Nancy, the pain of not knowing whether or not he killed her. The pain was all-consuming. Kill me now. He needed more. He was too fucked up to inject himself, and that's why Mom was there. So much pain, lying alone in a strange bed, thinking of Nancy. Was she there? Was she dead? Was this all a dream? Were they back at the Chelsea? What was happening? Was he gone already? Where was he going? In and out of consciousness. There, then gone, then back, with the pain. Give me a fix. He felt warm hands on his arms, affectionately tying him off and rooting around for a vein. Were they his mother's hands or Nancy's? Either way, it was a touch he'd grown to depend on. Then, a pinprick. Maybe this dope would do the trick. Maybe it would do what the slitting at the wrists and attempted jump out the window couldn't do. End the pain. He was drifting. This dope was so heavy. Nancy was definitely there with him now. Or was it Mom? It had to be Nancy. She was always there when the pain got to be too much. She was holding Sid's head to her bosom, rocking him back and forth, gently, speaking to him softly. Words, baby boy, mama, just words. Pain, drifting pain. And then, sleep. Forever. Sid was dead. The official cause of death? Heroin overdose. The unofficial cause of death? Suicide by heroin. The rumored cause of death? Sid's mom gave him a hot shot. Why? It was a maternal act of mercy. In 1996, before her own deadly overdose, Ann Beverly supposedly confessed to journalist Alan Parker that she had indeed given her son his final dose of heroin, and accounts from that night align with that confession. Ann Beverly was a lifelong, experienced heroin addict who knew exactly how much dope it would take to kill a person who'd been clean for 7 weeks. There is no way she couldn't have known. But why exactly? Sid beating the rap for murdering Nancy was a long shot. Rikers, with its rapists and real punks, terrified Sid. So did Nancy's ghost. Doing 20 plus years was unimaginable for the fragile rock star. He was suicidal. So his mom finally did what a mom is supposed to do. She may not have been able to sufficiently take care of her son while he was alive, but in one final act, she took care of her child the only way she knew how. Because she loved Sid, and love kills. I'm Jake Brennan, and this is Disgraceland. This episode of Disgraceland, its musical score and theme song were written by me, Jake Brennan. Pat Healy co-wrote this episode with me. Disgraceland is mixed and engineered by Sean Cahalan. Our theme...
Are you scared about the possibility of a second American Civil War? I'm Robert Evans. I'm the host of the podcast Behind the Bastards, and I've worked as a conflict journalist in a couple of actual civil wars, in Iraq and in Ukraine. And I'm here to tell you, I am scared of that possibility. If you want to know what might be awaiting your friends and your family, listen to It Could Happen Here. You can listen and subscribe at Apple Podcasts or on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you listen to podcasts.
There is a well-known story about Lisa Left Eye Lopez from TLC, and it's crazy. She burned her NFL-playing boyfriend's mansion down, apparently over an argument about sneakers. But there are other stories about Lisa that are just as crazy. She was on the run from demons. Demons she dealt with daily. One would push her toward the edge. One would try to hold her back. And Lisa feared that though only 30 years old, death was chasing her down. These stories were well known to her colleagues, and the perception was that Lisa Left Eye Lopez was, well, the crazy one. Maybe. I prefer to believe that she was just badass. She may have been possessed, but it wasn't by demons. It was by creativity. And Lisa Left Eye Lopez and her group, TLC, made great music. That music you heard at the top of the show, that wasn't great music. That was a preset loop from my Mellotron called Afro-Cuban Organ Low, MK1. I played you that loop because I can't afford the license for I Swear by All For One. And why would I play you that specific slice of adult contemporary cheese? Could I afford it? Because that was the #1 song in America on June 9, 1994, and that was the day that Lisa Left Eye Lopez burned down her boyfriend's mansion, kicking off a spiritual journey that would take her to the windy back roads of Honduras and ultimately to her grave. On this episode, Afro-Cuban Organs, a case of the crazies, 61 inches of badassery, a match, and Lisa Left Eye Lopez. I'm Jake Brennan, and this is Disgraceland. Lisa Left Eye Lopez came from a long line of artists and musicians. From a young age, her natural talent was evident. She sang, wrote, drew, danced. Her dad played piano, clarinet, and harmonica. Basically, he could play anything he got his hands on. But his hands were also part of the problem. Lisa loved her dad, but domestic abuse was always in the mix. Maybe it had something to do with his fiery, creative nature. Maybe it was due to his stint in the military. Maybe. But most likely, it was his drinking. Lisa's dad was super strict about everything except drinking. In fact, from the time Lisa was a preteen, they bonded over booze. Daddy-daughter days would just as well be a trip to the movies as they would be a drinking competition in the backyard. Look at little Lisa get after that beer. For some musicians, drinking and creativity go hand in hand. Often, the one begets the other. For Lisa, her creativity and her drinking were at odds from the jump. Lisa would joke that when she got too drunk, all of her behavior could be blamed on her alter ego, Nikki. But despite Nikki's presence causing plenty of trouble during Lisa's school days, Lisa's creativity won the day. She acted in school productions, sometimes as a star, sometimes as a backup dancer. She modeled and used her gifts as an illustrator to design her own outfits. Her brain was filled with a million different creative endeavors, each as compelling to her as the next. She wrote poetry and, of course, rhymes. And rhymes were the ticket to the future. It was 1990. Hip-hop was exploding, and for a young Lisa Lopez, potentially transformative. Just up the road in Atlanta, the South's burgeoning hip-hop scene was making waves. Two ambitious local movers and shakers, Antonio L.A. Reid and Kenneth Babyface Edmonds, were busy promoting and producing a wellspring of homegrown talent. Artists like Outkast, Toni Braxton, and Usher were about to bring the Dirty South to Middle America. So, in 1990, 19-year-old Lisa Lopez hit Atlanta with $750 in her pocket. When you're 19 years old and possessed by creativity, the universe has a way of making it all just kind of happen. It delicately pushes and pulls and presents you with opportunities. If you're smart, you listen to what the universe has to say. Lisa Lopez was no dummy. So when she finally connected with Tioni Watkins, aka T-Boz, and Rosanda Jones, aka Chili, she knew that as a musical trifecta, they'd be unstoppable. So TLC was born. And there was no time to waste. Yeah, T-Boz took her stage name to show she was a boss, but it was Left Eye, with a nickname co-opted from an offhand pickup line fed to her by some dude who was calling the creative shots. T-Boz had the voice, sultry, smooth, instantly recognizable. Chili was the dancer, with, it seemed, new moves every damn day of the week. So that left Lisa. She was the wild card. She'd play the crazy one. If the shoe fit. It didn't matter. She knew she'd stand out in a trio of outstanding talent and style, regardless of whatever role she had to play to sell an image. And ultimately, records. And the shoe did fit. With Nicki's presence, crazy was something Lisa was well acquainted with. But TLC was much more than just talent, attitude, and style. It was the 90s, and TLC was very much of the moment. They immediately tapped into the social consciousness of the decade, promoting safe sex with the style of the MTV generation. Equal parts En Vogue, Salt and Pepper, and some sugar-high cartoon that jumped off the back of your little sister's cereal box. TLC were something completely new. Their first album, Ooh on the TLC Tip, was released in 1992. The video for Ain't Too Proud to Beg, Left Eye with those massive sunglasses, the enormous green neon hat, undeniable energy, and the lyrics. 2 inches or a yard rock hard or if it's sagging. I ain't too proud to beg, no. Jesus, who the hell was TLC? You'd never seen anything like them before. You just knew the song was gonna be a hit. And the little rapper with the dirty mouth and the condom over her eye, she was fucking crazy. Ooh on the TLC Tip would eventually sell 6 million records. Not a bad opening statement for the group of 3 young female artists from Atlanta's burgeoning hip-hop scene. Left Eye rapped and sang and had her hands all over the album art and video concepts. She designed the stage sets, dressed the band, and was in large part responsible for the group's image. An image that would help push the group over the top and into American living rooms via MTV and late-night television appearances. At a time when mainstream hip-hop fashion was becoming predictable, gold chains, red, black, and green African flag color schemes, matching stage outfits, Lisa Lopez added bombastic colors, originality, and social consciousness to her look. One day, while getting ready, she took note of the condom and the safety pin on her dresser. HIV was on the rise, a scary time to be a sexually active young adult. Not talking about it wasn't doing anyone any good, so why accept the fact that carrying a condom for a young woman was anything but responsible? Why rely on a guy to protect you when you could do it yourself? And why hide the fact? Rather than throwing the condom and the safety pin in her purse before heading out, she pinned them to her pants. And that simple couldn't give a shit subversive fashion statement by one of America's rising young stars went a long way in making it okay to talk about safe sex publicly. It was an answer to Salt and Pepper's Let's Talk About Sex single from 2 years earlier. A chorus of young, empowered, female musical voices was helping shape the national conversation around HIV, and Lisa Left Eye Lopez was adding her voice and making the conversation fun. At least that's how some took it. Others just saw it as some crazy famous chick with condoms pinned to her clothes, which, given Lisa's behavior at the time, wasn't so hard to believe. As her success increased, So did her drinking. Nikki was bum rushing the show, and Lisa wasn't afraid to cast blame. After whatever crazy behavior would land her in trouble, Lisa would claim, "That ain't me, that's Nikki, my evil twin, who came from within, whom I blame for all of my sins." Getting up on the bar at the club, dancing, mugging for the camera with a condom over her eye, being a relentless flirt when it suited her. Sure, to some, I guess that behavior can be categorized as crazy. To me, it's just a pop star being a pop star. I bet Lisa's crazy rep had less to do with condoms as a fashion statement and more to do with her outspoken criticism of her music industry star makers. She called out her producer, Dallas Austin, for overcharging TLC on production. And on the night TLC took home 6 Grammys, from the press podium after the show, Lisa claimed that the group was broke and insinuated that it was due to her greedy record label and producers. Not exactly the message the music industry wants to hear after it coronates a young group of stars. Lisa's outspokenness and occasional drunken visit from Nikki were only part of the problem. Lisa's new boyfriend, Atlanta Falcons wide receiver Andre Rison, wasn't doing her any favors. Lisa was crazy for Andre, and Andre was crazy for Lisa. He liked the idea of having a famous girlfriend, so the two quickly moved in together. But despite her desire for a stable, monogamous relationship, Andre could not be tied down to one woman. He was unfaithful, jealous, possessive, short-tempered, violent, and when not on the football field, almost always drunk and belligerent. One night, outside an Atlanta nightclub, Lisa refused to pick up whatever bullshit Andre was putting down, and the argument became physical, escalating to the point of shots being fired off by Andre in an effort to gain control of the situation and his girlfriend. Cops were on the scene quickly, and tensions diffused, but Lisa, unwisely, refused to press charges. She loved the big thug. Number 80 was a handful, but she'd break him. She had so much faith in Andre that she had his digits tattooed on her left bicep. The lyrics for TLC's smash single, Creep, seemed to have spun out of Lisa and Andre's tumultuous, unfaithful relationship. The message was clear: cheat on me and I'll give it right back. But Lisa hated the song. Mainly, she hated the sentiment. She believed in fidelity to her core. Despite the outrageous clothes, fiery attitude, and over-the-top behavior, Lisa Left Eye Lopez from TLC was a one-man woman. Crazy. Robinhood is an investing app that lets you buy and sell stocks, ETFs, options, and cryptos, all commission-free. While other brokerages charge up to $10 for every trade, Robinhood doesn't charge any commission fees, so you can trade stocks and keep all your profits. Plus, there's no account minimum deposit needed to get started, so you can start investing at any level. The simple, intuitive design of Robinhood makes investing easy for newcomers and experts alike. View easy-to-understand charts and market data and place a trade in just 4 taps of your smartphone. You can also view stock collections, such as 100 most popular. With Robinhood, you can learn how to invest in the market as you build your portfolio. Discover new stocks, track your favorite companies, and get custom notifications for price movements so you never miss the right moment to invest. Robinhood is giving listeners of Disgraceland a free stock like Apple, Ford, or Sprint to help you build your portfolio. Sign up at disgraceland.robinhood.com. Robinhood is an investing app that lets you buy and sell stocks, ETFs, options, and cryptos, all commission-free. While other brokerages charge up to $10 for every trade, Robinhood doesn't charge any commission fees, so you can trade stocks and keep all your profits. Plus, there's no account minimum deposit needed to get started, so you can start investing at any level. The simple, intuitive design of Robinhood makes investing easy for newcomers and experts alike. View easy-to-understand charts and market data and place a trade in just 4 taps of your smartphone. You can also view stock collections, such as 100 most popular. With Robinhood, you can learn how to invest in the market as you build your portfolio. Discover new stocks, track your favorite companies, and get custom notifications for price movements so you never miss the right moment to invest. Robinhood is giving listeners of Disgraceland a free stock like Apple, Ford, or Sprint to help you build your portfolio. Sign up at disgraceland.robinhood.com. Everybody thought they knew Lisa Lopez, but most people didn't. They knew Nikki. Nikki was who'd come around after the drinks started flowing. Nikki was who'd bring the party to the next level. Hell, Nikki was a party unto herself, and she took zero shit from anyone. Kinda like a scrappy little pit bull. She was cute, but had a lot of bite in her. You'd be wise to watch what you said to her. Lisa, on the other hand, hung back, quiet for the most part, head in the clouds, wondering about this, ready to get into that. She had poems, dance moves, outfits she was designing, beats on the brain, movies she was going to star in one day, TV shows she planned on hosting, a documentary in Honduras she wanted to shoot. Together, Nikki and Lisa were unstoppable. One was filled with careless electric feel and magnetism, and the other with boundless creativity. But they hated each other. So that's where Nina came in. Nina would come around when Nikki was so drunk she'd be fucking up Lisa's plans. Nina had the thankless job of being the referee. She even had one of those black and white striped referee jerseys that the zebras who ran around the field with Andre wore. Nikki hated Nina, and Lisa could take her or leave her. Lisa knew her creativity would overpower Nikki's drunken bullshit one day or another. Then, Nikki wouldn't be showing up at any more parties. And with Nikki gone, it'd just be Lisa and Andre, alone, at last. And that's what happened. Lisa got it together, put all of her shit in one bag, so to speak, and moved into Andre's big-ass house over in Alpharetta, cut back on the drinking, not entirely, but just enough to keep Nikki at bay. She thought that mellowing out and moving in with Andre would bring calm to the hectic life that comes with being a major pop artist dating an NFL star. But Andre Risen's demons ran deep. And best she tried, Lisa was no match for Andre's jealous, narcissistic ways. The man could not keep his dick in his pants. Out, all night, every night, full of shit, all the time. After catching him in bed in the guest room with that slut from Velvet or the Cheetah or wherever Andre happened to be partying that night, Lisa knew she'd taken this as far as she could on her own. There was no way to break this dude, and she loved him, so breaking him was the only option. But Lisa didn't give up easy, so the decision was made. She needed Nikki. Nikki was a crazy drunk fool, but that type of crazy issued respect from men like Andre. So on the night of June 9th, 1994, Lisa decided that the party was on. She got dressed up and headed downtown. If Andre was gonna go out all night, every night, and openly cheat on her, then Lisa Left Eye Lopez of TLC was gonna go out and get hers, show Andre what exactly it was that he was missing, let him experience what it's like to wait up all night for someone to come home. Wondering where they're at, who they're with, what they're doing, with your mind darting down a dozen dirty roads, each dirtier than the last, each presenting potholes to make the pit in your stomach grow wider, each driving Nikki a little closer to the edge. Yeah, fuck Andre. Stay out all night. Come home wearing that dress that drives him wild, the short one with the slit that runs high up the side, and show him exactly what he's been missing. 5 a.m. She figured that was late enough. Even if Andre went out himself, he'd be home by then and with ample time to stew over where she was. So when Lisa pulled in Andre's driveway just after 5 in the morning and realized Andre wasn't even home yet himself, Nikki went through the fucking roof. Uh-oh. That prick. And just as that thought hit her lips, Andre's Benz pulled in the driveway behind her. Oh boy. Andre got out of the car, saw what Lisa was wearing, and that she herself was just getting home, and freaked the fuck out. Who did this woman think she was dressing like that and staying out all night? Nikki, Lisa smacked Andre in the face. Fuck this guy. Who did he think he was? From there, the fight moved into the house. Both of them drunk and screaming nonsense at each other at the top of their lungs, taking turns throwing random shit at each other until it came to blows. Andre wasn't a small man either. Lisa was a very small woman. The blow to the face came and went. Lisa didn't know when or how. Nikki was in control now. Nina was nowhere to be found. Typical. Once the fight died down, Lisa went into the bathroom to clean up. She looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the face looking back at her. Badly bruised. She became enraged. You know what you gotta do, right? Nikki pushed the issue. Kill the prick. Lisa stormed out of the bathroom intent on doing just that. But Nina intervened and got control of the situation. Lisa took a beat, retreated to the walk-in closet off of her bedroom to get some headspace and calm down. That's when she saw the shoes. Hundreds of them. Brand new, sparkling white tennis shoes. All of them size 12 in men's. That selfish prick. All men's. Nikki wanted to know where Lisa's shoes were. Oh yeah, that asshole didn't buy you any. He bought himself a new identical pair for every goddamn day of the year, but he didn't buy you jack shit. Shut up, Nikki. Fuck you, Nina. Lisa grabbed the shoes and headed back into the bathroom. She threw them in the tub, hit the closet and grabbed her lighter fluid and some matches. Back to the bathroom, past the stranger in the mirror, doused the shoes with lighter fluid, and then lit a match. The fire went up quick, like real quick. It immediately started spreading. How? Lisa had no idea. At first, she was frozen in fear. Then, she moved fast. And the next thing she knew, she was watching her boyfriend's house burn down on the 6 o'clock morning news. Just like that. She didn't mean to do it, really. But fuck him. He deserved it. Crazy. The news coverage the next day was ridiculous. Almost entirely one-sided. Against Lisa. Sure, she burned her boyfriend's mansion down, but it was because he beat the piss out of her. And let's not forget, the dude was a professional football player. The guy who openly cheated on her, controlled her, abused her. The guy whose fist imprint could practically still be seen on the massive bruise on Lisa's face in her mugshot from that day. That guy was the victim? Yes, a mugshot. Lisa had turned herself in and eventually pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 5 months probation and locked up in a halfway house for a month. Andre Rison played football and, I guess, kept banging strippers on his nights off. Lisa voluntarily went to rehab and with a clear head wrote the smash TLC hit, Waterfalls, which was included on the album Crazy Sexy Cool, released later in the fall of 1994. The song helped propel the album to 23 million in record sales. My God, what a hit. But the success wouldn't last. Lisa eventually fell out with T-Boz and Chili. The fire, the rehab, and the elevated success achieved largely through Lisa's writing of Waterfalls changed things for the young star. She now knew what she alone was capable of, with a clear head anyway. Creatively, Waterfalls made her, in her mind at least, a proven commodity, so betting on herself was a safe bet, the only bet. Relying on the influence of others was only fucking up Lisa's plans. She'd come to realize that Chili and T-Boz were proxies for Nikki and Nina. And Lisa, after rehab, was hell-bent on not being held back by anyone. No more TLC, no more Nikki, no more Nina. Lisa Lopez had arrived. She wanted it her way, or nothing at all. Time to move fast. Lisa went on to sign with Suge Knight's Death Row Records and began talks with David Bowie of all people about a collaboration. Now that's crazy. Before heading into the studio to complete her next album, Lisa headed to Honduras for a retreat. She had this clear-headed vibe on lock, but the trip wasn't going as planned. Lisa started picking up bad vibes, having premonitions, that an evil spirit was haunting her, that death was on the creep. One night, her and her assistant hopped in their car to go for a ride. The heavy, humid Honduran air was stifling, and a drive would do them good, or so they thought. Once in the car, the bad vibes started up again immediately. As they zipped down the windy road from their village, past the straw huts, they passed a dead horse on the side of the road. In unison, a flock of birds up above let out a screeching death rattle as it moved from one tree to another. And then, a blunt thud against their moving car. They immediately pulled over. On the road at their feet in front of their SUV, a critically injured 10-year-old boy. Quickly, they pulled him into the car and raced off to the nearest hospital, Lisa holding him the whole way, his blood sticking to her sweaty skin in the sweltering Central American night air. The boy died at the hospital. Lisa paid his medical and eventual funeral bills and later compensated the family for their loss. The guilt was immense. Lisa couldn't shake the feeling that the accident was supposed to take her life, not the boy's. She was convinced that an evil spirit was following her. A few weeks after the accident, on April 25th, 2002, Lisa Lopez changed out of the outfit she was wearing that day. It was all white. She then, for unknown reasons, chose an outfit of all black, got dressed, and without a destination in mind, decided a ride was needed to get some headspace. Still racked with guilt, Lisa jumped into her SUV and took off out of the village. She zipped by those huts again and past the dead horse, now just a loosely assembled pile of bones being picked over by a few vultures. Vultures. Death. More signs. Lisa sped away, trying to outrun her demons. She was distracted, driving way too fast, her head in the clouds, wondering about this, ready to get into that. The guilt was crippling, an aching pit in her stomach. Part of her thought she'd never recover. How could she write or perform again, with this feeling rolling around in her gut, with death chasing her down? She accelerated. The breeze felt good on her skin. And then, her SUV's rear end seemed to get out ahead of itself. Lisa lost control. She swerved, pulled the wheel to the left but overcompensated, then to the right. At the speed she was going, there was no recovery. The SUV flew violently off the side of the road, into the air, and then down into the ditch. The vehicle was totaled. Lisa Lopez died on the scene almost immediately. At the age of 30, with a clear head and a wide-open future creeping around the corner, Lisa Left Eye Lopez had left crazy behind when she shed herself of Nikki and Nina. She was about to move on to her second act creatively. Lisa had gotten her way, and now, in a flash, after speeding away from her demons in a fast-moving SUV, it was over. It was nothing. The last two lines of the chorus from TLC's Waterfalls, I know that you're gonna have it your way, or nothing at all, but I think you're moving too fast. Crazy. I'm Jake Brennan, and this is Disgraceland. This episode of Disgraceland, its musical score and theme song were written by me, Jake Brennan. Disgraceland is mixed and engineered by Sean Cahalan. Our theme song, Crenshaw Space Boogie, was engineered and mixed by Adam Taylor. Bryce Kanzer, Jay Canava, and Evan Kenny are the mighty talented musicians who performed the theme song with me. Our ad music was written and recorded by Ian Kennedy. This episode was co-written with Jesse Rogers. Okay, the moment you've all been waiting for. Winners of the review contest are CT Music Lover. Thanks for the review. You're getting a free poster. Email me so I can coordinate getting this out to you. Once again, CT Music Lover. You want a poster, so email me. Reviews are super important, and Disgraceland rewards you for your support. So if you want to win one of these killer Avi Spivak illustrated posters, head over to Apple Podcasts and leave a review. And while you're there, be sure to rate us and to subscribe. If you're not on Apple, no sweat. Just hashtag subscribe to Disgraceland, and you can win a free Disgraceland poster. Just like Ash Tone Terra, you're getting a free poster. Email me through the site, and I'll hook it up. For the rest of you, if you'd like to purchase a Disgraceland t-shirt, there are 2 designs available on the website. Zombie Elvis pins are also available for sale. So go to www.disgracelandpod.com. And as always, talk to me on Twitter and Instagram at DisgracelandPod, as well as on Facebook. And if you didn't know, there's now an official Disgraceland group page that you can join and mix it up with your fellow discos online. Okay, hope you dug the episode. The next episode drops in 2 weeks on May 1st and is on the Rolling Stones, their stint in the sack with the First Lady of Canada and heroin trafficking. You're not going to want to miss this one, so stay tuned. Or better yet, make sure you're subscribed and tell a friend. Until then, rock-a-rolla.
He's a bad, bad man.
Maybe it's who you woke up next to this morning. Maybe it's what you had for dinner last night.
Or how you're getting to work right now. It's invisible, but AI is already...
Love is hard.
But I was so afraid. I could lose everything.
Love is wonderful and confusing and magical and infuriating.
Everything about life that we had thought and planned and hoped for was just in that moment gone.
I was so lucky to have that.
Join the millions of listeners who've made Committed possible. I promise you, it's cheaper than therapy. Listen to Committed on Apple Podcasts, the iHeartRadio app, or wherever you get your podcasts.
New York City club kids in the 90s lived shockingly decadent lifestyles. Their sense of spectacle went beyond their open drug use and flamboyant fashion. In public, they drank each other's urine, had sex with amputated limbs, obliterated gender norms, and packed large-capacity Manhattan dance clubs. Fueled by an endless stream of hard drugs and a new form of electronic music that was loud and abrasive, club kids were propelled by aggressive beats, the perfect soundtrack for this new post-punk, post-disco, clubland decadence. It was great music. King of the club kids, Michael Alec, didn't make great music. In fact, he didn't make any music at all. He made nobodies into somebodies. He was a club promoter, as much a Pied Piper as other rock stars you can think of. Michael Alec packed clubs, put an entire scene on his back, and wound up on the cover of magazines and splattered across television screens. He made headlines. He made people happy. He made people dance. He made people famous. And he made one person turn up dead in a box on Staten Island. But he didn't make great music. That music at the top of the show, that wasn't great music either. That was a preset loop from my Mellotron called Samba Electric Organ MK1. I played you that loop because I can't afford the rights to Vision of Love by Mariah Carey. And why would I play you that Kind of Forgettable Cheese by Miss Mariah? Could I afford it? Because that was the #1 song in America on August 15th, 1990. And that was the day that Michael Alec launched Disco 2000, kicking off the Club Kid movement and setting into motion a series of decadent events that would bring about what would come to be known as a disco bloodbath. On this episode, Samba Electric Organs, Smoking Hot Forgettable Cheese, a disco bloodbath, Club Kid decadence, and Michael Alec. I'm Jake Brennan, and this is Disgraceland. Bone-colored business cards, Oliver Peoples glasses, bespoke Valentino suits, a table at Dorsia. Without these in 80s Manhattan, you're a nobody. At least you're a nobody from the perspective of Bret Easton Ellis's brilliantly satirical Patrick Bateman from American Psycho. That table at Dorsia, it's hard to come by. Harder than the money it takes to afford bespoke suits and trendy eyewear. You have to know someone. And you're from East wherever the fuck, so you don't know anyone. So you head downtown to find your place, but lower Manhattan hotspots like the Odeon or Cafeteria are off limits because the running of the Wall Street Bulls is in full effect. In The Masters of the Universe, are rubbing Coke straws with Jean-Michel Basquiat and SNL cast members in the bathroom. And you're either too young, too broke, too openly gay, too unsexy, or too much of all of the above to fit in. And so you head over to the Bowery to try your luck with the punks and the hardcore kids. But you'd rather eat Gigi Allen's shit than sit through some post-punk mediocrity with the offensively asexual crowd at CBGB's. Max's Kansas City is dead. The Mud Club is closed. Elaine's is where your mom would hang out if she could afford a bus ticket and shoes that didn't look like Tom McCann's stolen out of the discount section from Caldor's. You're alone in New York City. You know nobody. You are a nobody. And what do? Reinvent yourself into something outrageous and more decadent than Patrick Bateman, Jean-Michel Basquiat, and even crazier than Gigi Allen. It worked for Michael Alig. In 1984, 18-year-old Michael Alig was alone in New York City, fresh off the bus from South Bend, Indiana. He quickly found his place at Danceteria. Danceteria was the spot for Alig to reinvent himself. It was the epicenter of New York cool. The Beastie Boys worked as busboys. LL Cool J was an elevator attendant. So was actress Debbie Mazar. Sade tended bar and had her first performance ever there. But no performer is more associated with Danceteria than Madonna. Danceteria is where she honed her craft, where she became Madonna, and it's where Michael Alig became Michael Alig. As a busboy himself, he witnessed the exact kind of magic needed to attract young, horny, impossibly cool Manhattanites to a club on a nightly basis. The only problem? Alig had no talent. He couldn't play guitar, or write, or act. It didn't matter. The creativity and free expression at Danceteria taught him that you didn't need to be a performer to draw people. All you needed was a hook. What does the pre-feminism Mad Men character Bobby Barrett say to Don Draper? This is America. Pick a job and then become the person who does it. And that's what Michael Alig did. He picked the job of promoter because you didn't need to know how to sing or dance or any of that. All you needed was a friend who could DJ, a club looking to sell drinks on an off night, a little creativity, and decadence. Lots and lots of decadence. In 1988, Michael Alig was hired by New York City nightclub owner Peter Gatien to work as a party promoter at his club, The Limelight. Alig's parties were the most outrageous, the most decadent, and quickly became wildly successful. In part because Alig created what became known as the Club Kid. It's impossible to describe the look of a club kid. Remember that rave you went to in college? The one where you were certain you were getting dosed by the sketchy dude wearing lipstick, frosted tips, an astrological sign choker, and leopard print creepers? Okay, a club kid is who that guy was trying to look like. A club kid is an even more outrageous version of sketchy roofie dude from college. But throw in a mix of drag queen, Japanese anime, heroin chic, B-grade horror, and a dress stolen from your little sister's American Girl doll collection, and you're getting closer to the club kid look. Club kids took hard drugs, designer drugs, and took on flamboyant, ludicrous personas. Michael Alig's friend and fellow club kid, James St. James, was a self-proclaimed celebritan, meaning he was famous for, well, being famous. This was the early 90s, way before internet ubiquity, social media, and just at the cusp of 24/7 news and infotainment. To be famous for no good reason, And in the absence of talent, you needed to be over the damn top. St. James described the club kid vibe as part drag, part clown, part infantilism. In addition to St. James, Aleg's club kids included, among others, superstar DJ Kyoki, who sometimes, clad in nothing more than glitter and a diaper, would provide the soundtrack for Aleg's parties. The stunning genitalia, who was prone to big pink dresses, big black boots, and big blonde wigs worn over a shaved head, which, when revealed, made her even more attractive. And a little-known at the time drag queen, who went by the name RuPaul, whose stint as a club kid came before his supermodel of the world glamazon status. And Amanda Lepore, who, like other club kids, not only bended gender lines, but completely scrambled them with her undeniable and over-the-top sexuality. In the late 80s and into the early 90s, these and an army of other club kids owned the New York City nightclub scene. It was a scene defined by over-the-top public displays of sex, overindulgence of hard narcotics and designer drugs, and an overthrow of the highly codified, stale rock and roll by a new form of electronic music that was loud, abrasive, and propelled by relentlessly aggressive beats that kept the party going well into the morning. At Limelight, and at other Peter Gatien-owned clubs, Michael Aleg was the straw that stirred the roof-and-all drink. His Wednesday night party, Disco 2000, featured over-the-top acts to draw further attention, with characters like Floyd the Human Money Tree, who would strip naked, pin $100 bills to himself, and run through the crowd into a grabby free-for-all. Or Ernie the Pea Drinker, who, you guessed it, would openly piss in a glass in front of the crowd and gleefully slurp it all down. Aleg himself would frequently piss on his crowd from the balcony at Limelight and pass out cups of his own urine to unsuspecting clubgoers. No behavior was too shocking. It was all done in the name of hedonism and decadence, and it worked. The word was out on the club kids. Michael Musto from The Village Voice noted that Aleg's hedonistic minions had filled a void in New York City nightlife left behind by Andy Warhol's death. New York Magazine put Aleg on its cover. Geraldo and Joan Rivers had them on their television shows. The Limelight and Gatien bigger club Tunnel remained packed. As the notoriety of the club kids grew, so did Aleg's appetite for the outrageous. He staged elaborate outlaw parties in public places. Manhattan Burger Kings and subway cars were suddenly, out of nowhere, overrun by club kids and drag queens for instantaneous dance parties. And Aleg began producing other events beyond Disco 2000. There was Unnatural Acts, where one night, Woody the dancing amputee lost his prosthetic while performing a dance, only to be joined on stage by a female clubgoer who had sex with both his prosthetic and his stump. The depravity and decadence was way out in the open. Anything went. Overt sexuality, bisexuality, homosexuality, pansexuality, any sexuality. And the drug use kicked up a notch. Special K was everywhere. Club kids boasted of snorting 6-inch lines off of 8-inch dicks. Punch bowls were laced with acid. Balloons filled with ecstasy descended from the ceilings and onto the dance floor. And Aleg promoted another night called Blood Feast, with a flyer depicting him dead on the floor, dismembered and covered in blood. Club kids would show up dressed in homage to their favorite serial killers. And in a sign of the horrific reality to come, Aleg would arrive in a wheelchair, covered in someone else's blood. Robinhood is an investing app that lets you buy and sell stocks, ETFs, options, and cryptos, all commission-free. While other brokerages charge up to $10 for every trade, Robinhood doesn't charge any commission fees, so you can trade stocks and keep all your profits. Plus, there's no account minimum deposit needed to get started, so you can start investing at any level. The simple, intuitive design of Robinhood makes investing easy for newcomers and experts alike. View easy-to-understand charts and market data and place a trade in just 4 taps of your smartphone. You can also view stock collections such as 100 most popular. With Robinhood, you can learn how to invest in the market as you build your portfolio. Discover new stocks, track your favorite companies, and get custom notifications for price movements so you never miss the right moment to invest. Robinhood is giving listeners of Disgraceland a free stock like Apple, Ford, or Sprint to help you build your portfolio. Sign up at disgraceland.robinhood.com. Robinhood is an investing app that lets you buy and sell stocks, ETFs, options, and cryptos, all commission-free. While other brokerages charge up to $10 for every trade, Robinhood doesn't charge any commission fees, so you can trade stocks and keep all your profits. Plus, there's no account minimum deposit needed to get started, so you can start investing at any level. The simple, intuitive design of Robinhood makes investing easy for newcomers and experts alike. View easy-to-understand charts and market data and place a trade in just 4 taps of your smartphone. You can also view stock collections such as 100 most popular. With Robinhood, you can learn how to invest in the market as you build your portfolio. Discover new stocks, track your favorite companies, and get custom notifications for price movements so you never miss the right moment to invest. Robinhood is giving listeners of Disgraceland a free stock like Apple, Ford, or Sprint to help you build your portfolio. Sign up at disgraceland.robinhood.com. Because of Michael Alec, the Limelight was making Studio 54 seem like a cute suburban key party your parents might have attended back in the 70s. This, during a time when Rudy Giuliani, U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, and then Mayor of New York City, was doing everything in his considerable power to restore social norms and law and order back to Gotham City. And in Gotham City, Michael Alec, king of the club kids, the pajama boy come Pied Piper, could give 2 fucks about Rudy Giuliani. In Alec's myopic, drug-addled view of the world, he was a prince. He had the power. After all, he determined who got past the velvet rope, who sat next to him on Geraldo, who got mentioned to the Village Voice, and who he graced with his presence. The decadence and all the drugs created an alternative reality for Alec, one where he was immune to any surrounding pressure or sense of right and wrong. He didn't know from Rudy Giuliani. Alec had no sense of right or wrong or decency. It was all about the party and the shock and the headlines. He didn't understand or care about the pressure his boss and benefactor, Peter Gatien, faced to clean up his act at Limelight, or else be closed. All Alec understood at this point was getting high. When pressed by Gatien to get clean or else be fired, Alec tried striking a compromise where he promised to only smoke crack while taking heroin. Or was it he'd only take heroin while smoking crack? It didn't matter. It all came crashing down. Giuliani turned the screw and Gatien was forced to close Limelight. Alec flamed out of rehab and descended into a drug stupor that would have made Courtney Love jealous. Cocaine, Special K, heroin, and crystal meth were all swimming through Alec's system while he holed up in his luxury West Side apartment, paid for by Peter Gatien, with fellow club kid Robert Freeze Riggs, and the two were nearly out of drugs. This was a problem. So was the fact that Alec owed his drug dealer, Angel Melendez, money. Maybe this was why friends of theirs recounted that Alec was running around town, casually mentioning that he wanted to kill Angel. Angel Melendez wore wings. Literally. That was his club kid shtick. He also dealt heroin. He'd hung out with the punks at CBGB's before finding his way to the rough trade over at the piers on the west side. A pier queen and street smart, Angel was by all accounts a sweet kid who was saving his drug profits to break into the movie business and break away from the madness of clubland. Problem was, collecting drug debts was a real headache, and Michael Alec's debt was becoming a real problem. It wasn't just that he owed Angel thousands of dollars. It was that he was being a real prick about it, disparaging him in public, not letting him into the parties he was hosting. And then the little bastard found out where Angel was stashing his drug cash and managed to steal 18 grand, only to go and blow it all on furniture. Furniture. Alec and Freeze were renovating their apartment. Angel was pissed, and rightly so. Angel Melendez showed up at the Riverbank West luxury apartment complex where Michael Alec was holed up with Robert Freeze Riggs on March 17, 1996, demanding his money back. Michael mocked him and insisted on more heroin. Freeze told Angel that he and Alec only let him hang around because he had drugs. This enraged Angel. A struggle ensued. Angel bit Michael and threw him into a china cabinet. A huge shard of glass from the cabinet pierced his back. Blood spewed everywhere. Freeze then grabbed a nearby hammer and swung hard at Angel, coming down on his head 3 times. More blood. Angel fell to the ground. Michael pounced. He wrapped his hand in a sweatshirt and began pummeling Angel in the face. Then he strangled him. At that point, one of them grabbed the Drano. They held Angel down and poured it into his throat. To be sure that he swallowed it, they duct taped his mouth shut. Exhausted, Michael and Freeze flopped on the couch, while Angel lay on the floor choking to death. The official cause of death was asphyxiation. After a brief rest, Michael and Freeze dragged Angel's body to the bathroom tub. In an effort to mask the coming smell of Angel's dead body, they covered him in ice, baking soda, and more Drano. Then they get down to the business of getting high as fuck. Turns out, when you kill your drug-dealing friend, you inherit his stash. And what a stash it was. For 8 days, Michael and Freeze sat around the apartment doing nothing but heroin, while Angel's body sat in the tub, rotting. The stench became unbearable. Something had to be done, so it was decided that Freeze would head down to Macy's to buy some butcher's knives. When he returned, he and Michael did more heroin to blunt the reality of what they were about to do next. Stumbling into the bathroom, through the haze of rotting flesh and swarming flies, Michael Alec, king of the club kids, got down on his knees and, wielding his Macy's butcher knife, began sawing the limbs off of his friend, Angel Melendez. He started with the legs, removing them from the tub and placing them into a duffel bag. They placed them, along with the torso, into an empty television box and secured it shut with their trusty duct tape. The box was then placed in the living room, where it briefly doubled as a coffee table. To mask the smell, man, that smell, they sprayed Calvin Klein Eternity everywhere. The irony, eternity, to mask the stench of death. Needless to say, the flies remained. But the flies couldn't stop the drug binge. There was too much heroin to do. Friends came by and remarked on the smell. Alec blamed it on faulty sewage in the building. And when friends inquired to Angel's whereabouts, Alec would casually mention that he killed him, chopped him up, and stuffed him in a box. Look, that box right over there, as a matter of fact. No one believed him. So Michael Alec did what he did best. He kept the party going. According to multiple sources, in the days and weeks following Angel Melendez's death, Michael Alec was telling anyone who would listen that he had killed him. But nobody thought it was true. This was, after all, the guy who promoted a club night called Blood Feast, where people were literally drinking their own urine on stage, showing up dressed as serial killers or in costumes with bloodied, dismembered limbs. So when Michael started telling fellow club kids the grisly details of the crime he'd just committed to one of their friends, people thought it was all a put-on. But Village Voice nightlife columnist Michael Musto thought otherwise. He knew where Michael Alec lived, on the corner of narcissism and drugged-out madness, right between unhinged reality and the gaping hole of insecurity. And so Musto published a blind item in the Village Voice on April 23, 1996, called Nightclubbing. In it, he addressed the swirl of scandal surrounding Alec in Freeze's rumored crime against Angel Melendez. Page 6 then picked it up. The Voice followed up a couple months later with their own cover story. At this point, Alec started to realize the gravity of the situation and began denying his earlier claims, telling people that it was all a ruse, a prank. But the heat intensified. So Alec took the money he'd made from selling the furniture he'd bought with the money he'd stolen from Angel and hit the road. NYPD detectives were on him in no time. They found him holed up in a sleazy New Jersey hotel. And so Michael Alec and Robert Freeze Riggs played nice with authorities and pleaded guilty to manslaughter. They were sentenced to 10 to 20 years. Alec served 16 of them. Released in 2014, Michael Alec is, well, Michael Alec. He's up on YouTube with a show called PU, where he and fellow club kid Ernie Glam super serve nostalgic Clubland fans with decadent tales from the 90s. And where they promote Alec's recent ventures, like his new club night at Manhattan's mega club Space Ibiza. And where they dispute rumors about Alec, like his supposed purposeful spreading of HIV as claimed by Lucien Wintrich. And where they set the record straight about Alec's recent drug bust, the one where he was busted in a Bronx park at 2 a.m. with Special K, valiantly on his way to return the drugs to a drug dealer from a friend supposedly trying to get clean. What a guy. Rehabilitated, worthy of parole, after mercilessly dismembering the body of his friend? You be the judge. One thing I know to be true is that Michael Alec is definitely still Michael Alec, even post-prison. Watching the YouTube videos, it's easy to catch a glimpse of the 20-something provocateur in Alec's more world-weary eyes, as he attempts to make use of modern technology to shock and engage an audience, and most of all, remain relevant. The smartass is still there. Sure, it's without the assless chaps, but if Alec feels any real remorse, the YouTube videos make it hard to build a case that prison had any real rehabilitative effect on his character. I wonder how members of Angel Melendez's family feel about all of this. When that late night, unprocessed grief knocks, and they head to social media to catch a glimpse of their loved one. Maybe they punch Angel Melendez Club Kid into the YouTube search box and head down the rabbit hole. There's Angel on Geraldo. Big red angel wings, big eyes, big boots, Brando biker hat. And there's Angel with RuPaul at a Burger King outlaw party. You click on the Joan Rivers link, but no Angel, because search algorithms are insensitive beasts. They know so much about us, but how can they possibly know about our grief? They can't. Which is why below the Joan Rivers clip, there's a clip from Macaulay Culkin's feature film on Angel's death, Party Monster. And below that are a couple of shockingly graphic documentaries that you'd rather not watch again. And finally, at the bottom of the search, more general Club Kid videos start to pop up. And there's 2017 Michael Alec, 3 years out of jail and looking barely worse for wear. He's got a fresh new haircut, a trendy t-shirt that is a size too small, and is drinking what must be an $8 coffee from some hot shit gentrifying barista. He's regaling us with fabulous details from his latest trip to West wherever the fuck, and imploring us to come party with him at his new dance night in Manhattan, where you and thousands of his closest friends can live out impossible to imagine decadent fantasies in real life. You can do that. You can. Michael Alec gets to do that. Angel Melendez does not get to do that. He's dead. He's no longer stuffed in a duct-taped TV box. His remains have been interred somewhere more respectable. Close by, though. Right over there, as a matter of fact. And Michael Alec, he's still doing what he does best. Keeping the party going. I'm Jake Brennan, and this is Disgraceland. This episode of Disgraceland, its musical score and theme song were written by me, Jake Brennan. Disgraceland is mixed and engineered by Sean Cahalan. Our theme song, Crenshaw Space Boogie, was engineered and mixed by Adam Taylor. Bryce Kanzer, Jay Canava, and Evan Kenny are the mighty talented musicians who performed the theme song with me. And our ad music was written and recorded by Ian Kennedy. This episode featured the songs Primetime Sex Crime, Love Songs, and Ain't That Cold, written, performed, and produced by Bodega Girls with Adam Taylor and Paul Coldery. The noisy air conditioner that's about to go on in a couple seconds in the background is brought.
Are you scared about the possibility of a second American Civil War? I'm Robert Evans. I'm the host of the podcast Behind the Bastards, and I've worked as a conflict journalist in a couple of actual civil wars, in Iraq and in Ukraine. And I'm here to tell you, I am scared of that possibility. If you want to know what might be awaiting your friends and your family, listen to It Could Happen Here. You can listen and subscribe at Apple Podcasts or on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you listen to podcasts.
The stories about soul singer James Brown are insane. Notorious for fining his band members for dropping beats and for firing them for dropping acid, he himself would later mix his angel dust in with his cream corn for breakfast. He once took his shotgun and blasted up a juke joint in an attempt to murder fellow soul singer Joe Tex, injuring 7 people in the process. When Elvis Presley died, James Brown requested and received a private viewing of the body, where he kneeled over and whispered to the dearly departed king, "Elvis, you rat, I ain't number 2 no more." The myth surrounding the birth of James Brown is that he was a stillborn baby, but worked so hard that he overcame the impossible, and then applied the same work ethic to overcome the soul-crushing poverty he grew up in to become America's soul brother number 1. Coming from nothing, he worked his supernatural talent hard and took it as far as he could take it, to the top, becoming one, if not the, most successful musicians of all time. It goes without saying that James Brown made great music. Some of the greatest music ever made, in fact. That music at the top of the show, that wasn't great music. That was a preset loop from my Mellotron called Samba Organ 68 Low MK2. I played you that loop because I can't afford the license for Don't Worry, Be Happy by Bobby McFerrin. And why would I play you that specific slice of inspirational a cappella cheese could I afford it? Because that was the number 1 song in America on September 24th, 1988. And that was the day that James Brown, with his shotgun at his side and high as a Georgia pine, took authorities on a wild PCP-induced high-speed chase across interstate lines, kicking off what would become the last chapter of his wildly entertaining career. On this, the last episode of Disgraceland Season 1, Angel Dusted Cream Corn, Samba Organs, Inspirational a cappella cheese, a high-speed chase, and the hardest working man in show business, James Brown. I'm Jake Brennan, and this is Disgraceland. Time off was hard for the hardest working man in show business. James Brown hated not working. He hated time off. Nothing to do except get high and fight with Adrian. Adrian wasn't around this morning, thank God. So Mr. Brown sat in his truck, alone, sweating in a black Adidas tracksuit. The PCP he'd smoked for breakfast had him on edge, so he was rolling a joint to help level him out. Bobby McFerrin's Don't Worry, Be Happy was threatening to make its way through the static on the pickup's FM dial. He hated the song, but his hands were too preoccupied with the weed to deal with the tuner at the moment. Don't worry, be happy. How are you gonna write a song like that and wake up every morning and look at yourself in the mirror? In 1988, For James Brown, there was a lot to worry about and little to be happy for. As arguably the most successful black entertainer of all time, one of, if not the most influential musicians of all time, was 55 years old, broke, strung out, losing his teeth, and having a hard time doing what he was put on this earth to do, to work. It was Saturday morning in Augusta, Georgia. Everyone was out running errands, which meant nobody was at Mr. Brown's office, which meant it was a perfect time and place for privacy. But even the weekend had its complications. Mr. Brown kept a business office in Augusta, a single-level, nondescript roadside strip mall space that he rented out to local businesses and also used as an excuse to get away from his wife. For some reason, beyond his comprehension, his office had been overrun that morning by a bunch of herbs, white dudes in khaki pants and running shoes, bad ties and cheap frames. It was an insurance seminar or some nonsense, a bunch of pencil necks, no class. But Mr. Brown admired the hustle, a seminar on a Saturday. Hail to the working man. Still, they were messing with his plans. It used to be that no matter what the complication, if James Brown wanted something done, there was someone at arm's length, on salary, to take care of it. But that wasn't the case these days. By 1988, tax issues and declining ticket sales forced Mr. Brown to cut back. No more private jets, no more personal hairdressers, no more bagmen, and no more muscle to sort out life's little annoyances for him. It had been years since Mr. Brown cut baby James and Henry Stallings loose. Both men were part of his security team, or what he called his hit squad. Big men, capable men, able to take on all comers. He regretted cutting them loose, especially this morning. Henry would have this mess in hand in no time. And baby James, well, he'd kill for less. Mr. Brown remembered them fondly, particularly a night back in Harlem not too long ago, when their unique skill sets were put to use and allowed the hardest working man in show business to do what he was put on this earth to do, to go to work. Jimmy! The voice crackled over the backstage phone at Harlem's Apollo Theater. The accent a mix of old-school Italian and 1970s Brooklyn. Jimmy, we know you like your bags of money, Jimmy. We're going to send a couple guys down with 30 large, buy some new suits for the band, get a suite at the plaza, and stay a while. They called him Jimmy. Punks. Everyone else, even the President of the United States of America, called him Mr. Brown. Quote-unquote Jimmy hated these guys. They called or came around every time Mr. Brown came through New York. Always wanted to just give him money. But he knew what that meant. A loan from the mob, and then they owned you. Back in the 60s, he had to humor them and politely refuse. James Brown didn't need anyone's money, especially not a white man's. He was bankrolling himself, in debt to no one. I don't want nobody to give me nothing. Open the door. Let me in. I'll get it myself. Lyrics from James Brown's 1969, I don't want nobody to give me nothing. But in the late 70s, the Italian mafia's grip on Manhattan was more powerful than ever. So Mr. Brown took the telephone call out of obligation, and also on the advice of his quote-unquote new son, the young man from Brownsville, Brooklyn by way of Queens, Reverend Al Sharpton. The Rev, as he was called, told him he had to at least hear the wise guys out. Young Al Sharpton knew exactly what was up in New York City, which was in part why James Brown kept him around. He liked young people who knew what he did not. Plus, the Rev would do anything for Mr. Brown. He was the dad he never had. James Brown sat on the phone and stared at the walls backstage. He loved this old theater, the scene of one of his greatest triumphs. His 1963 Live at the Apollo was one of the greatest-selling live albums of all time. You'd be hard-pressed to find a black household in America that didn't have a copy filed away next to the family record player. But man, these days, backstage at the Apollo was a rat hole. Nonetheless, Mr. Brown built this place. He'd be damned if he was going to be extorted by some goon for the opportunity to work. at the Apollo of all places. Insulted and with zero patience left, Mr. Brown cut to the quick. Listen, I don't need your money. I never needed your money. Now I gotta go. I gotta go do my thing. The voice on the other end of the line grew tense. Now you listen to me, Jimmy. We know you got the IRS all over you. We know you're burying cash in your backyard and the squirrels are eating it faster than the little fatty Sharpton works the buffet table. We know you got ex-wives coming out of your ass threatening to sue. We know you ain't selling tickets like you used to. Now take the goddamn money, Jimmy. If you don't, our guys ain't gonna bring cash. They're gonna bring bags of rats and let them loose throughout the Apollo during the show. How you like that? Mr. Brown just hung up. Any other performer would have called the FBI, or worse, taken the money. But Mr. Brown wouldn't back down. He knew what to do. How could he not? Years earlier, he got his start on the Chitlin circuit, a post-World War II rhythm and blues concert circuit that existed almost entirely outside of the law, that practically invented vice, that was built on the back of the numbers racket, a tight network of black-owned nightclubs that existed only but for the grace of bribed white politicians, where women of ill repute with names like Caldonia, Short Fat Fanny, and Long Tall Sally inspired men named Louis Jordan, Larry Williams, and Little Richard to immortalize them in song. Richard's inspiration being secondhand, of course. Dice parlors, dance halls, bootleggers, and great live music by some of the greatest, most consequential musicians in American history. B.B. King, Ike Turner, John Lee Hooker, and countless other rock and roll pioneers cut their teeth on the Chitlin circuit. This is where band leaders went to college. No textbooks required, just bagmen and muscle. The circuit was so corrupt and violent that getting paid at the end of the night, if you got paid at all, was to take your life into your own hands. To get paid, you needed 3 things. Number 1, a .38 caliber pistol and the willingness to use it, and show the steel subtly. Maybe shift it casually from under one side of your belt strap to the other when negotiating the terms of your payment. Number 2, a dude on your payroll big enough to demand half your fee up front before the show, in a bag, preferably a dirty one, with grease stains, made to look like nothing more than a greasy sack of fried food. And finally, the third thing you needed was to give off the vibe that you just didn't care. Didn't care if you got cut, didn't care if you got shot, didn't care if you lived, and didn't care if you died. It was the foundation that the rock and roll ethos was built upon, not giving a single fuck. The only way to stay alive was to intimidate, and to intimidate you had to be nutty enough to not care. All you cared about was getting paid and going to work. Despite his success after the Chitlin circuit, James Brown never forgot this lesson. So that night in Harlem, with his livelihood in the Apollo Theater under the threat of the mafia with their bags of rats, Mr. Brown dispatched his own hit squad into the crowd to keep an eye out and to discourage any wise guy hijinks. Baby James spotted some sha-na-na looking dude skulking along the back wall with a big bulge under his jacket, out of place and with a style that was 15 years out of fashion and not paying any attention to anyone else in the building, just moving slowly, like a creep, along the back wall of the theater. Before he knew it, he was swept up under each arm by what had to be mountains posing as men. Sha-na-na dude had no idea what was happening. He was being moved fast. A hand on the back of his greasy head pushed his face into 2 exit doors. The doors opened and he was airborne, thrown out of the theater and into the alley. He landed hard, face first, stars under his eyelids, rats scurrying out from the bag at his side and off through the alley. He heard a sudden roar from the crowd from inside the Apollo, as the hardest working man in show business, without anyone getting in his way, started to do what he was put on this earth to do: work. So now, ladies and gentlemen, it is star time. Are you ready for star time? Robinhood is an investing app that lets you buy and sell stocks, ETFs, options, and cryptos, all commission-free. While other brokerages charge up to $10 for every trade, Robinhood doesn't charge any commission fees, so you can trade stocks and keep all your profits. Plus, there's no account minimum deposit needed to get started, so you can start investing at any level. The simple, intuitive design of Robinhood makes investing easy for newcomers and experts alike. View easy-to-understand charts and market data and place a trade in just 4 taps of your smartphone. You can also view stock collections such as 100 most popular. With Robinhood, you can learn how to invest in the market as you build your portfolio. Discover new stocks, track your favorite companies, and get custom notifications for price movements so you never miss the right moment to invest. Robinhood is giving listeners of Disgraceland a free stock like Apple, Ford, or Sprint to help you build your portfolio. Sign up at disgraceland.robinhood.com. Robinhood is an investing app that lets you buy and sell stocks, ETFs, options, and cryptos, all commission-free. While other brokerages charge up to $10 for every trade, Robinhood doesn't charge any commission fees, so you can trade stocks and keep all your profits. Plus, there's no account minimum deposit needed to get started, so you can start investing at any level. The simple, intuitive design of Robinhood makes investing easy for newcomers and experts alike. View easy-to-understand charts and market data and place a trade in just 4 taps of your smartphone. You can also view stock collections such as 100 most popular. With Robinhood, you can learn how to invest in the market as you build your portfolio. Discover new stocks, track your favorite companies, and get custom notifications for price movements so you never miss the right moment to invest. Robinhood is giving listeners of Disgraceland a free stock like Apple, Ford, or Sprint to help you build your portfolio. Sign up at disgraceland.robinhood.com. James Brown was the hardest working man in show business, and that work was paying off. He was a millionaire, had his own jet, fur coat, a new Stetson for every day of the week, a traveling hairstylist. His records flew off the shelves and into black and white homes alike. He played upwards of 360 dates a year with multiple shows a day, and his appearances demanded tens of thousands of dollars in fees. And beyond the money, he had influence. To African Americans, young and old, he was an example of the American dream. A real-life rags-to-riches story with supernatural talent. And by the late 60s, James Brown had positioned himself, at great risk to his own personal wealth and standing, at the center of the Black Power movement. James Brown invested his money in black businesses, black neighborhoods, and invested his time into black causes. His hit, Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud, in 1968 America, literally changed the country's social dynamic. All of a sudden, young African Americans were proudly embracing their heritage, and like Mr. Brown, growing their hair out for that natural look, and leaving behind the white-influenced rebel without a cause processed pomp. And he did all this while at the height of his musical powers, with his bands The Famous Flames and then the JBs. James Brown wouldn't just challenge musical genres, he would invent them. Soul out of necessity, funk on purpose, and hip-hop as a matter of influence. But by the 70s, success was starting to slip. The IRS was in relentless pursuit of his unreported millions. President Richard Nixon had managed to get Mr. Brown's tax charges bounced down from criminal to civil court, but it wasn't enough. The taxmen do take their bite, and Nixon's affiliation had the added disadvantage of alienating a large part of James Brown's black audience. James Brown would never come to understand why. He supported Nixon because Nixon believed in self-reliance, in socioeconomic independence, the very ideas that James Brown saw as keys to his own success. I don't want nobody to give me nothing. Open the door, let me in, and I'll get it myself. A sentiment that in the late 80s suddenly had new meaning compared to when it was written in 1970. Without salaried muscle, getting it himself was the only option. So, on the morning of September 24th, 1988, James Brown, high on PCP and weed, grabbed the shotgun out of his pickup truck and opened the door of the office adjacent to his, an office full of white insurance men and women who quickly grew terrified of this wild-eyed, past his prime, high as holy hell, shotgun-wielding black power superstar. James Brown, the godfather of soul himself, stood before them, pacing, sweating, taking turns between sternly lecturing them and laughing to himself at some joke that apparently only he was in on. He waved the shotgun around as he spoke. The Herbs were terrified. He was growing more and more angry, but at what? It wasn't entirely clear. Something about someone using his bathroom or office without permission. Didn't they know it was rude to use another man's commode? Why'd they have to invade his privacy? Didn't their parents teach them any manners? James Brown was practically raised by wolves, but he knew better than to mess with another man's privacy, especially on his day off. Then he heard the sirens. Somehow, someone managed to call the cops. James Brown knew instinctively that despite whatever celebrity status he still had, he was still a black man in the South who was waving a shotgun around at a bunch of white people. Time to get on the good foot and bounce. James Brown hightailed it out of the office, shotgun in hand, jumped into his pickup and squealed out of the parking lot and out onto the highway. The sirens grew louder. He could see them in his rear view. Hot damn, how many police cars did they have in this county? Whatever the number, they all seemed to be in pursuit of him at this moment. God damn it! Bobby McFerrin was back on the radio with that ridiculous song. How many times a day could they play this garbage? In every life, we have some trouble, but when you worry, we make it double. Mr. Brown punched the tuner. Bye-bye, Bobby. Another peek in the rear view. More cruisers. This was bad. Where was he going? He didn't know. Just away. Away from this madness. What happened? How had it come to this? Constant drama, the fighting with Adrian, the flailing career, the drugs. I mean, he was clean most of his life. He fired Bootsy Collins for taking LSD, and now, here he was, sweating PCP through his Adidas tracksuit, teeth rotting out of his head, arthritic legs, in bad need of another joint to cool him out, and in a high-speed car chase with a bunch of good old boys and a loaded shotgun at his side. Something had to give, and quick, or he was likely to be ventilated by one of those new police-issued Glock 19s. Mr. Brown gunned it and took off. Now, more cops on his tail. And up ahead, a makeshift roadblock with 2 state troopers standing in the middle of the road, legs spread, guns drawn, pointing straight at Mr. Brown in his fast-approaching pickup. He pinned the gas pedal as hard as he could, pain shooting straight up his arthritic leg as he set off straight toward the 2 troopers who quickly parted, one to the left and one to the right, as Mr. Dynamite sped right through the middle of them. They turned and took aim. Bullets now pierced the body of the racing pickup. More cops in the rear view. It was like a goddamn Dixie police parade. Up ahead, another roadblock. This one, with 2 cruisers in the middle of the road, their grills kissing one another. Again, troopers in the middle of the street, fixed in a shooting stance, arms outstretched, Glocks trained on the pickup, fear racing through their veins. Don't you fucking do it. Don't you speed up. But that's exactly what James Brown did. Covered in sweat, with his angel-dusted head hovering high above the turpentine trees, Mr. Brown pinned the pedal. The V8 wound itself into a roar. God damn the one. 4 on the floor. And faster than the Breakneck Flames version of Think from Live at the Apollo, James Brown rocketed through the roadblock, parting the cruisers, destroying the police barricade, and sending the good old boys diving to safety along the roadside. James Brown screamed as he drove away. For a moment, the adrenaline rivaled the feeling he had on stage, but the feeling was quickly dashed by the sound of bullets riddling his pickup. Bum rushing the barricade meant all bets were off. The troopers were pissed and began firing off rounds, hanging out of the windows from their pursuing cruisers. And Mr. Brown was taking shots. His tires were shot out. His truck slowed from breakneck famous Flame speed to broke dick Bobby McFerrin speed. And he was scared now. These white boys were gonna kill him, no doubt about it. He kept the truck rolling, slowly but surely, and eventually over the state line into South Carolina, and then back over the line into Georgia, where he eventually came to a stop, ending the pursuit. Damn it. Now what? James Brown tried to do what he did best, entertain. He got out of the truck slowly, but loudly singing the words to Ray Charles, Georgia, and then started in on his famous Goodfoot dance. The troopers were not impressed. A plainclothes cop came out of nowhere and violently brought his fist crashing down into the side of James Brown's face. A cheap shot, and a painful one. But it ended the incident. Good God. Mr. Brown was taken into custody and released almost immediately on bail. And within 24 hours, he would be arrested again for driving under the influence of PCP. Think about the good things and think about the wrong things. Prisoner number 155413 had a lot of time to think. 12 and a half years, as a matter of fact. 6 in Georgia, and then another 6.5 in South Carolina. He served half his time before being paroled, but could have avoided prison altogether had he pleaded guilty to the drug charges and gone to rehab instead. But that was a non-starter. Prison, for James Brown, was preferable to rehab. Rehab meant admitting that you had a problem and that you were weak. And for James Brown, admitting weakness wasn't an option. Not when you're born into crushing poverty, in a dirt floor shack in the Jim Crow South, to a mother who would abandon you at 4 and a father who would split 5 years later, leaving you at the age of 9 to be raised in a whorehouse by your prostitute aunt, Honey. Yeah, James Brown knew how to survive. Given his violent, neglected upbringing, it's very difficult to reconcile the man with the crimes he committed. And man, did he do some bad shit. Super bad. His transgressions were as offensive as his talent was immense. The book on James Brown goes something like this. In 1949, at age 16, he was convicted of grand theft and served 3 years. During his Chitlin Circuit days, he tried murdering rival R&B singer Joe Tex after stealing his wife. James Brown entered a juke joint where Otis Redding and the Pine Toppers were on stage, and with his shotgun, opened fire on Tex, who was seated at a table. Tex went unharmed, but 7 people were wounded in the crossfire and subsequently paid off by Mr. Brown to keep their mouths shut. Throughout his life, he openly abused girlfriends and wives. Most notably, singer Tammy Terrell, who he beat savagely. He allegedly once repeatedly hit her in the head with a hammer. Terrell eventually collapsed on stage while singing with Marvin Gaye. She was diagnosed with a brain tumor and died shortly after. Between 1987 and 1995, his then-wife, Adrienne, had him arrested 4 times for domestic abuse. And in the year 2000, police showed up at his door to investigate a charge by a local electric company worker who claimed Mr. Brown had attacked him with a steak knife. Domestic abuse charges would plague him for the remainder of his life until his death on Christmas Day in 2006 of congestive heart failure. James Brown saw abuse as something to be endured. Whether you were a man or a woman, and whether you were on the giving or receiving end, because the beatings he witnessed and received as a young boy left scars, defining scars. It was horrifying. As a 9-year-old boy, he was hung upside down in a gunny sack and beat mercilessly with a belt by his aunt, Honey. Growing up in a whorehouse, he regularly took beatings from drunk Johns and watched as they abused the prostitutes who roomed with him. A 9-year-old. These were his formative years. It doesn't excuse anything, don't get me wrong, but it does help explain James Brown's emotional wiring. When he bounced out of prison at age 19, he instinctively knew that work was going to be the only thing that would save him. And music was the only semi-respectable work he knew how to do. So he made it happen with 0 resources. Brown's first band, the Gospel Starlighters with Bobby Bird, performed their first shows without instruments. Literally, no instruments. Without drums, they stomped the beat on floorboards. Without guitars, they whistled riffs. All while they sang with passion, commitment, and drive. It was all they had. At age 19, James Brown was a 5'6" dark-skinned African-American ex-con who broke into the music business and bent it to his will, becoming the most influential black musician of all time. And he did it on his own, through the power of his work ethic. I don't want nobody to give me nothing. Open the door. Let me in. I'll get it myself. Unlike subjects covered in past episodes of this show, James Brown wasn't good-looking like Sam Cooke. He wasn't white like Jerry Lee Lewis. He didn't have a powerful church looking out for him like Beck. He had 0 advantages. Zero. All he had was his will, his supernatural talent, and his undeniable work ethic, which is why, when the work dried up in the 80s, his world came crumbling down around him. Without work, there really was nothing. The work kept him sane, kept him on the run from himself. Without work, without the daily opportunity to showcase his talent, to show the world that he wasn't just another ordinary dude from the backwoods of Georgia, there was nothing but demons, PCP, beatings, or worse. I started this podcast. I started Disgraceland to try and figure out what it was that makes rock stars so fucking crazy and so entertaining. You can draw a straight line from one to the other, from crazy to entertaining. Rock stars are wired differently. They aren't like you or I. Rock stars are more like feral narcissistic animals than functioning members of society, and this is precisely what makes them so damn entertaining. That wildness, that craziness, almost always has something to do with their traumatic upbringings. And it's hard to find a better example of this than the star who is nationally and internationally known as the hardest working man in show business. The man that sang, "I go crazy. Try me. You got the power. Think. If you want me. I don't mind. Bewildered. $1 million seller. Lost someone. The very greatest release. Night Train. It's Everybody Shout and Shimmy. Mr. Dynamite. The amazing Mr. Please Please himself. The star of the show. James Brown and the Famous Flames. I'm Jake Brennan, and this is Disgraceland. This episode of Disgraceland, its musical score and theme song were written by me, Jake Brennan. Disgraceland is mixed and engineered by Sean Cahalan. Our theme song, Crenshaw Space Boogie, was engineered and mixed by Adam Taylor. Bryce Kanzer, Jay Canava, and Evan Kenny are the mighty talented musicians who performed the theme song with me. Our ad music was written and recorded by Ian Kennedy. And this episode featured the songs Juvenile Delinquent and She's Into Black Guys, written, performed, and produced by Bodega Girls with Adam Taylor and Paul Coldery. The writing assistance on this episode was by Pat Healy. All right, poster time. Sweet Dickie Frank, you're getting a poster. Sweet Dickie Frank. Great name. Email me through the website and I can coordinate getting one out to you in the mail. And thanks to you and everyone else for the reviews. They make a difference and have kept Disgraceland on the Apple charts and help more people learn about the podcast, which is why I'm always barking about reviews and giving away posters. Reviews on Apple Podcasts are way important. And if you're not on Apple, you can still win a poster by shouting out Disgraceland with hashtag subscribe to Disgraceland on Instagram, Twitter, or on Facebook. Just like Michigan Sad Girl, another great name. You're getting a free poster. Send me an email and I'll get a poster out to you. All right, as the Philadelphia Daily News said about Tupac Shakur after he was murdered, that's a wrap. Season 1 of Disgraceland is in the books. Thank you all so much for listening and for supporting the show. I'm truly blown away by your interest in the show and by the excitement. I can't thank you enough. I've got some cool stuff in the works for Season 2, so please come back. I'm going to take 2 weeks off for the holiday, and we'll then be back on July 10th to launch the second season of Disgraceland with a 2-part episode on John Lennon coming out of the gates. I'm warning you now, it's a pretty critical look at one of my favorite musicians, and I was a Yoko fan before starting to research this one, and let's just say that now, not so much. All right, no spoilers. More episodes coming at you after that on a mostly bi-weekly schedule. Motley Crue, Frank Sinatra, Johnny Paycheck, Brian Jones. And yes, the people have spoken. The people have been heard. There will be a Gigi Allen episode, so get your wet wipes ready. In the meantime, the complete line.
Love is hard.
But I was so afraid. I could lose everything.
Love is wonderful and confusing and magical and infuriating.
Everything about life that we had thought and planned and hoped for was just in that moment gone.
I was so lucky to have that.
Join the millions of listeners who've made Committed possible. I promise you, it's cheaper than therapy. Listen to Committed on Apple Podcasts, the iHeartRadio app, or wherever you get your podcasts.
The stories about 80s LA metal band, Motley Crue, are totally insane. They had a violent, fuck-it-all approach toward anything and anyone who got in their way. Bass player Nikki Sixx once hammered a nail through a so-called poser's ear. Bored, on tour, the band would break bottles over each other's heads and see who could swallow the most broken glass. In the early days, they would pimp out their 17-year-old drummer Tommy Lee for beer money in studio time. They had sex with, or tried to have sex with, anyone and anything that moved. Nikki once went so far as to try to bed Tommy's mom, and of course, they all slept with each other's girlfriends behind each other's backs. And when they made it big, they took their earnings and bought a plane. But it wasn't enough just to own their own jet. Motley Crue had to paint a giant dick and balls on the tail so that when they landed, it would literally look like they were flying in to fuck the city. The excessive sex, drugs, and violence led to several near-death experiences, multiple car crashes, fires, fights, drownings, and drug overdoses. Yet Motley Crue made a habit of cheating death and made some great music along the way. That music I played you at the top of the show, that wasn't great music. That was a preset loop from my Mellotron called Vienna Waltz Marimba Low MK1. I played you that loop because I can't afford the license for Faith by George Michael. And why would I play you that specific slice of diddly-esque pleather cheese? Could I afford it? Because that was the #1 song in America on December 23rd, 1987. And that was the day that Nikki Sixx, bass player of Motley Crue, died. And of course, it was also the day he came back to life. On this episode, pleather cheese, waltzing marimbas, cheating death, and Motley Crue. I'm Jake Brennan, and this is Disgraceland. In 1977, Frank Farana was a 17-year-old teenage delinquent. He was a pill-popping weedhead and devoted Johnny Thunders wannabe. Frank Farana was a vacuum cleaner salesman who dealt quaaludes on the side with his next-door neighbor, a neighbor whose wife he was secretly sleeping with. Frank Farana was also a punk, a fiend, a single-minded rock and roll animal whose one ambition was to become the biggest, baddest bass player in the world's biggest, baddest rock band. Frank Farana was Nikki Sixx. Frank stole his stage name from a childhood musician friend whom he deemed unworthy of such a badass moniker. So Frank did what came natural to him. He saw what he wanted, and he took it. And voila, Nikki Sixx was born. Fuck that other guy. So Nikki Sixx took to the streets of late 70s Hollywood, hell-bent for action. Unlike most, he didn't see his idols as people to live up to. He saw his idols as people to outlive. For Nikki, Johnny Thunders of the New York Dolls and Sid Vicious of the Sex Pistols were warm-up acts for the real thing, him. Nikki Sixx might not have been in a band yet, but he lived the life. He stole, cheated, fucked, and fought his way to the top of the Sunset Strip heavy metal heap. Punk rock was burning out of the public's consciousness, and fast. His beloved Sex Pistols were over, as were the New York Dolls. Bands like The Clash and Elvis Costello's Attractions were, in Nicky's mind, too soft, and had sold out the promise of punk rock to the mainstream, and were more concerned with being political and seeming smart, rather than being rock and roll. Too clever by half. Fuck that. Nicky envisioned a world where the sleaze and glamour of his beloved punk and British glam bands would dominate the pubescent imaginations of teenagers everywhere. He began dressing the part he was scripting for himself. Silver studs, skin-tight black jeans, Capezio boots, or better yet, Capezios with stiletto heels. Hair dyed jet black and piled up high to the Hollywood Hills. And of course, eye makeup. It was part Bleecker and Bowery punk and part Spiders from Mars glam. It was androgynous but masculine at the same time. It was tough, and it was sexy. You didn't know whether you wanted to fuck Nikki or fight Nikki, or both. It didn't matter. The look was meant to confuse, to compel. Now who's this hot chick hanging out at the club who looked like he wanted to kick your ass? Oh yeah, she's a he, and he's in a band. What kind of band? He doesn't look punk. He doesn't look glam. What the hell is he? Shock. Awe. That was the idea. If you didn't like it, you could fuck right off, head downtown with the new wave geeks, or out to Venice with the hardcore kids and gangbangers who never got laid and took their frustration out on each other in the pit. Slam dancing. A bunch of pent-up latent homosexual frustration, if you ask Nicky. Nicky Six was at the club for 2 reasons. To find his future bandmates and to fuck your girlfriend. And if you didn't like it, well, that was your problem. When not at the bar or hanging out, Nicky was either sleeping off a buzz or, regrettably, working. And Nicky hated work. But he didn't hate where he worked, at the liquor store. Chicks from Sunset Strip were always wandering in and eager to check out the glamazon Italian kid with the makeup and dreamy eyes working the register. And work the register he did. Nicky was regularly skimming off the top to buy drugs, booze, and musical gear. But the real reason he didn't hate where he worked was because it was close to the action. Musicians from bands playing and hanging out at nearby clubs, the Starwood, the Rainbow Room, and the Troubadour, were always popping in. Most of them were posers, hairdressing weekend warrior types who wouldn't know Sweet from Cheap Trick. But Nicky was optimistic. One of these nights, a like-minded rock and roll warrior would walk in and Nicky would finally have a bandmate. And so it happened. The dude looked like he was Gene Simmons' mini-me. That is, if Gene Simmons were actually as badass as his image purported him to be. This dude was far fucking out. He was dressed head to toe in black, a beat-up Les Paul guitar case in hand, platform boots with duct-taped heels, silver studs, his eyes heavily mascaraed and buried beneath his jet-black bangs. He spoke in barely audible mumbles, and Nicky commented on the guitar, asked him his name, and wanted to know the bands he was into. And the little alien-looking Cousin It dude told Nicky, but Nicky wasn't listening, because it didn't matter. A Cousin It could have said John Dever or Judy Collins, and it wouldn't have mattered at all. Because the dude's look was right. And like the rock gods Jagger and Ronson before him, his name was Mick Mars. And he was perfect in all ways but one. He was on his way to Alaska for a tour with his lame band. Shit. Nicky wasn't deterred, though. He was determined and kept up the search. Through a mutual friend, he hooked up with a 17 going on 12-year-old drummer and ball of frenetic energy named Tommy Lee. Tommy was young, but he had chops, and he was a skinny Adonis. The chicks loved him before he even sat down at his kit. Plus, he and Nicky had legit chemistry. And Tommy idolized the older Nicky Six, who'd already gained a rap on the strip as a dude not to be fucked with, and a dude who was going places. But they still needed a guitar player. So they started combing Recycler magazine's classifieds. Tommy spotted the listing first. It read, loud, rude, and aggressive guitarist available. And there was another listing with the exact same number, and this one with even more spot-on descriptors. Extraterrestrial guitarist available for any other aliens that want to conquer the Earth. Tommy couldn't get the little wheel on the rotary telephone to spin fast enough. He quickly dialed the number to set up a jam session. And in a couple of days, a fey knock on the door produced none other than the alien-looking Cousin It dude from the liquor store. Nicky could not believe his eyes. It was the universe talking. Mick Mars had arrived. 3 down, 1 to go. They needed a singer. Tommy knew a guy. It was a long shot. The guy was beyond cool, way cooler than Tommy. Maybe even cooler than Nicky and Mick, but Nicky and Mick didn't give a fuck, and really, what's cooler than not giving a fuck? Nothing. But Tommy's ex-schoolmate was like the coolest dude on campus. He was a singer in a local band that jammed on Cheap Trick and Aerosmith, and that mainly existed as a means for the band to get laid. Not that the singer, who Tommy coveted, needed any help. He was gorgeous. He had that Spicoli look before that Spicoli look was even a thing. Long, blonde, sunstroke surfer hair, eternally tanned, ripped Levi's, devilish eyes, and the dude could not only hit those high Robin Zander notes, he could work the crowd like Steven Tyler. And Tommy's timing couldn't have been better. The singer was on the outs with his band, so a rehearsal with Tommy, Nicky, and Mick was arranged. The 280Z roared into the parking lot at Burbank's IRS rehearsal studios with authority, and 18-year-old Vince Neil hopped out of the driver's seat, trailed by his very attractive, very rich, older girlfriend, the owner of the 280Z, who proceeded to tell anyone who was listening, no one was, just how stupid an idea it was for Vince to be stooping to Tommy Lee's level. She was thoroughly ignored. A gallon of peppermint schnapps was shared, as were a few words on musical references, and the usual suspects, the Dolls, the Pistols, Sweet, Sabbath. And when they got down to it and picked up their instruments, the chemistry was instant. Tommy's energy pulled Nicky's sloppy bass playing into a makeshift pocket. Mick's guttural riffs provided a dark platform for Vince's anthemic voice. And they quickly demonstrated a knack for making powerful, electrifying music. And in no time, Motley Crue was born. And throughout their life, as a band, they would demonstrate an uncanny knack for cheating death. Everyone knows vampires aren't real. Everyone except Angelinos. LA residents have a special relationship with the creatures of the night. A weariness almost, like an acceptance that, yeah, if vampires exist anywhere, and they probably exist here in LA. Up the road in Sacramento in the late 70s, Richard Chase, an enterprising 27-year-old serial killer, drank his victims' blood before cannibalizing them. And he was known publicly as the vampire killer. And in Hollywood, there'd long been rumors of secret vampire societies where members were known to subsist on raw filet mignon and to drink the blood of teenage girls during sex. Whenever residents read in the paper about a Jane Doe turning up dead, maybe underneath a bridge down in the valley, they couldn't help but think about the Lost Boys out in Venice or the Bad Boys out on the Strip, standing in the shadows with designs on the blood pumping through the good girls, home with broken hearts. Dom Menendez was a God-fearing man, and he was outside his apartment complex watering the flowers in his front yard like he did every Sunday morning before church. Went out of the front door, stumbled what Dom believed to be one of Hollywood's rumored creatures of the night, in the flesh, before his very own eyes. Could it be? Tall, menacing, dressed like an extra from a Mad Max movie, with skin the color of milk and one tattooed arm shielding his eyes. But what was most telling and most frightening was the blood. It covered his face, and it was most intense around the vampire's mouth, fresh from a feeding frenzy, in Dom's apartment building, on a Sunday, before church. Dom dropped the garden hose and passed out, face down in his petunias. And Nicky Six didn't give him a second look as he bounded by and hopped into his Porsche. He flipped down the driver's side visor to check his mascara in the mirror, and that's when he noticed the blood. Shit. No wonder the old man was looking at him strange. Nicky looked like a glammed-out Vlad the Impaler. The blood must have been from the nerdy neighbor he'd been going down on earlier that morning. She clearly had her period, and judging from the amount of blood, it was day one. And Nicky didn't care. He was spiraling out of control. It was 1984. Motley Crue's second album, Shout at the Devil, had established them as a band not to be fucked with. Critics hated it, kids loved it, and it was selling, big time. And Nicky and the rest of the boys were living the life. But fresh off the road from an epically debaucherous tour with the Prince of Darkness himself, Ozzy Osbourne, Nicky was at loose ends. He'd discovered his girlfriend at the time, former Runaways guitar player and Five Alarm Smoke Show, Lita Ford, had been set up with another dude by one of her skeezy punk rock guy friends. And Nicky was pissed. So he grabbed Tommy and a couple 2x4s and headed over to Lita's apartment where he knew her punk rock friend was staying. The two burst in like a heavy metal buddy cop duo and proceeded to beat the punk dude to near death with the 2x4s. Then, it was off to Reseda Country Club. Nicky had dropped Tommy off at his place and picked up a date. He was high on Quaaludes, drunk on Jack, and with this new girl who was hot to trot. And the two pulled into the parking lot and hopped out of the Porsche, but only made it as far as the hood before giving in to their carnal desires. It was broad daylight, and Nicky was fully engaged in intercourse with his date on the hood of his car in the middle of the Reseda Country Club parking lot. A crowd began to gather and started to egg them on. Nice car, dude. Nice dick, dude. Hey, is that Nicky from Motley? It is. Too loud. Nicky, despite the distraction of the crowd and despite his inebriation, brought himself to climax, rolled off his date and onto his back on the hood of his Porsche. With Frank Ferrana's salami still hard and fully exposed, he looked at the crowd of wastoid metalheads and staring at him, he wondered, who am I? Is this real? Am I really alive? Robinhood is an investing app that lets you buy and sell stocks, ETFs, options, and cryptos, all commission-free. While other brokerages charge up to $10 for every trade, Robinhood doesn't charge any commission fees, so you can trade stocks and keep all your profits. Plus, there's no account minimum deposit needed to get started, so you can start investing at any level. The simple, intuitive design of Robinhood makes investing easy for newcomers and experts alike. View easy-to-understand charts and market data and place a trade in just 4 taps of your smartphone. You can also view stock collections, such as 100 most popular. With Robinhood, you can learn how to invest in the market as you build your portfolio. Discover new stocks, track your favorite companies, and get custom notifications for price movements so you never miss the right moment to invest. Robinhood is giving listeners of Disgraceland a free stock like Apple, Ford, or Sprint to help you build your portfolio. Sign up at disgraceland.robinhood.com. Robinhood is an investing app that lets you buy and sell stocks, ETFs, options, and cryptos, all commission-free. While other brokerages charge up to $10 for every trade, Robinhood doesn't charge any commission fees, so you can trade stocks and keep all your profits. Plus, there's no account minimum deposit needed to get started, so you can start investing at any level. The simple, intuitive design of Robinhood makes investing easy for newcomers and experts alike. View easy-to-understand charts and market data and place a trade in just 4 taps of your smartphone. You can also view stock collections, such as 100 most popular. With Robinhood, you can learn how to invest in the market as you build your portfolio. Discover new stocks, track your favorite companies, and get custom notifications for price movements so you never miss the right moment to invest. Robinhood is giving listeners of Disgraceland a free stock like Apple, Ford, or Sprint to help you build your portfolio. Sign up at disgraceland.robinhood.com. Living long was never the plan. Living fast was the plan. Johnny Thunders didn't have a retirement fund, and Sid Vicious didn't have a fucking IRA. And to paraphrase Farron Young, live fast, fuck hard, and leave a notorious memory. But Nicky, Mick, Tom, and Vince were beginning to sense their immortality. Again and again, they managed to escape their certain fate. There was the fire in the hotel room in Germany where they managed to get out unharmed. And there was the other fire on stage where Tommy's drum tech set his face aflame with the smoke machine and flooded the stage, yet the band avoided electrocution. And there was the time Nicky walked away naked and dazed from a bad car accident where he wrapped his Porsche around a tree. And there was the constant drug abuse, coke, heroin, speedballs, and yet no overdosing. Not yet, at least. And of course, there was constant casual sex. Casual is too casual a word. For Motley Crue, sex wasn't casual. Sex was a 24/7 full-time occupation. The band was DTF fully and fucked all the time. They slept with everything and anything. Vince had been having sex with multiple women multiple times a day since he was in high school, before he was even a star. In the early days, they pimped out Tommy for beer money. They made him sleep with the engineer at the first studio they recorded at for free studio time. To throw the girlfriends off the scent of their Sunset Strip sexual conquest, the boys would hit the taco truck on their way home at night, buy a couple egg and cheese burritos and stick their dicks in them to mask the smell of sex. And when they became famous, it just became more insane. Sex backstage was a given before and after shows, like immediately after shows, as in walk off stage, grab a girl, any girl, and get right down to it. Quick, in public view of everyone else around. It is no exaggeration to say that life for Motley Crue was quite literally a non-stop orgy. How they all hadn't contracted HIV was a miracle. Yet, there they were, living it up, and cheating death. Mick Mars had been drinking for days straight, trying to avoid his girlfriend, his bandmates, and any and all sense of responsibility that his newfound fame was now cramping his style with. He was the type of drunk that is hard to explain to people who haven't gone on serious 2, 3, 4-day benders. The type of drunk where the consistent drinking and lack of sleep creates an alternate reality in one's mind. One where you feel in total control, even though, of course, you totally aren't. Your thoughts make sense to you, yet you are completely out of step with reality. You speak to your friends and you hear the words come out of your mouth, and they sound perfectly articulate. But what your friends hear is a garbled, backward mess of words. You get ideas like, hey, I don't necessarily want to go swimming, but I just want to walk into the ocean because it seems peaceful. And yeah, I know I've been drinking rum and coke since last Tuesday, but still, I got this. It doesn't matter that I can't swim. I'm just going to walk into the ocean. I'm not even going to take my clothes off. Besides, it's nighttime. Nobody's even here. But doesn't the water look so peaceful? And so, Mick Mars, like Sterling Hayden in The Long Goodbye, stepped into the Pacific Ocean from the sandy shore below Vince Neil's Redondo Beach home. One step, and then another, his mind began to quiet. Finally. And then, blackness. "Where's Mick?" Tommy asked Vince at the party upstairs at Vince's place. Now, who the fuck knows? Vince could have cared less. He was busy watching Tommy's fiancée, Honey, take turns, at Tommy's insistence, on going down on a row of guys in Vince's jacuzzi. Honey would do anything for Tommy, and Tommy would do anything for his friends. The Hanoi Rocks guys were in town from Finland, and they were at Vince's Redondo Beach house celebrating the U.S. tour they were waiting to embark on. The party was epic, even by Motley Crue standards. Not only were the Hanoi guys in town and in need of being shown a good time, but famous producer and Hollywood Hills party impresario Roy Thomas Baker was hanging out. He'd been the first to show Motley Crue how to throw a party. RTB, as they called him. His parties were as legend as the Queen and T-Rex records that he made. So Vince was serious about returning the favor. The only problem was, they were out of beer. And where the fuck was Mick? The 1972 Ford Pantera is a serious automobile. It was Ford's answer to the Ferrari, the Lamborghini, and Porsche sports cars. It's a small car, built for speed, a V8 engine capable of pumping out an impressive 330 horsepower. Most Ford Pantera owners are car hobbyists, weekend track rats who use their powerful speedster to race around with other semi-pros. And Vince Neil used his Ford Pantera for beer runs, after staying up for 3 days straight, drinking and doing blow. Vince pumped the engine. The Pantera purred like a panther as it was designed to do. The sign said 25 miles per hour. The odometer said 50 miles per hour. And the engine now roared. Razzle Dingley, drummer for Hanoi Rocks, hung on for dear life. His right hand clutching the handle above the passenger side door, his left hand cradling a couple $100 worth of booze and beer or brown paper bags on his lap. The curvy Redondo Beach roads were unforgiving. Vince pushed the accelerator. 55 miles per hour. Razzle grinned, exhilarated. Slick with freshly fallen rain, the road unwound before them. Vince wound the engine faster, 60 miles per hour. Faster still, 63 miles per hour. Even faster, 65 miles per hour, in a 25 mile per hour zone. Then, headlights. Razzle's heart pumped with fear. Vince pumped the brakes, and the Pantera spun, angling passenger side first across the road and right into the front of the oncoming Volkswagen. Its passengers were pinballed together violently. The side door nearest Razzle, now an accordion, pushed his prone body onto Vince's lap. Blood, Razzle's blood, was everywhere. The impact was too much. Razzle Dingley, drummer for promising heavy metal band Hanoi Rocks, an expectant father, died later that evening at the hospital. Vince Neil, singer of the world's most hedonistic rock band Motley Crue, emerged unscathed, blew a .17 on the breathalyzer, paid a $2.1 million fine, served 30 days in a country club posing as a prison, and hit the road with his band again like nothing happened, having thoroughly cheated justice and death for what seemed to be the umpteenth time. Tommy Lee, perhaps realizing the STD bullets he dodged up to this point, took himself off the market and married actress Heather Locklear. Vince Neil, fresh out of rehab and jail, went right back to being Vince Neil, snorting drugs, banging everything that moved. On that fateful night that Vince Neil's carelessness brought death to his friend Razzle's door, Mick Mars washed up on the shore beneath Vince's house after his half-hearted stab at suicide. He awoke to the blinding Pacific Coast sun. His clothes dried and wrinkled on his dry and wrinkled skin. The ocean had spit him back out. Death, it seemed, didn't want him on that day, and nor did it want Vince or Tommy. But death hadn't quite made up its mind yet about Nikki. Nikki Sixx died on December 23, 1987, at Cedars-Sinai Hospital in Los Angeles, California. The doctors pronounced him dead before midnight. Death suited Nikki. It came with a calm, a sense of inner peace and a balance that he could never quite attain in life. The feeling overtook him, and he dug it. A warm wave embraced him as he ascended out of the ravaged, tattooed, and track-marked shell of a body he'd been dragging Nikki Sixx around in for the better part of a decade. A body he'd been injecting with cocaine and heroin regularly, daily, sometimes at the same time. A body that used to be beautiful, but now was little more than a glammed-out, road-worn bag of bones. He could see it lying there, at first exposed to the jarring fluorescent hospital lights. Then, lying unnaturally still under a sheet atop the gurney he'd been on since back at the Franklin Plaza Hotel. The party at the hotel with the Guns N' Roses and Megadeth guys was turned up to 11 per usual. Someone offered to tie Nicky off with some sweet Persian heroin, and as soon as the drug hit his vein, he went blue and passed out. Someone called 911. The drug dealer jumped out of the window and took off down the street yelling, "I just killed Nikki Sixx!" G&R guitarist Slash, confused and frightened, decided it was a good time to trash the hotel room's bathroom. The EMTs quickly made the scene and strapped Nicky to the aforementioned gurney and hustled him to the hospital, and now, here he was, dead. He could see the commotion all around him, but felt no turmoil. Emergency room staff frantically booted him up with adrenaline shots from big, ugly hypodermic needles, but nothing. He heard the EKG monitor chirping intermittently, but now it just sang a sad one-note song. A nurse with thick forearms repeatedly smacked Nicky's cheeks. A doctor shouted, "We're losing him!" Hospital staff buzzed in and out of the room. He heard someone ask, "Is that really him?" And through all of the tense energy surging around him, Nicky remained calm and watched his death unfold below him. He was content for the first time in his life, except he wasn't alive. He was dead, lying on a gurney, under a sheet, with his eyes closed. Yet he could see everything around him. He felt nothing but peace. He had no sense of guilt or ego or addiction, just calm. Then, the worst pain he'd ever felt in his life. A jolt to his heart that was part lightning bolt, part Peterbilt tractor trailer grill, and bam! Nicky opened his eyes and bolted upright on the gurney. Back to life, but feeling like a truck hit him. The pain was immense. His headache was blinding. His eyes burned. His stomach gnawed. He itched all over. He was admitted, given a room, and questioned by police, who wanted to know who gave him the heroin. Nicky asked if he was under arrest. The cops said no and pressed him again to give up his dealer. Nicky told him to fuck off, ripped the IV needles out of his arms, pulled the tubes out of his nose, and walked out of the hospital shirtless in just his leather pants and motorcycle boots. Sid Vicious died of a heroin overdose. Pussy. Johnny Thunders also died of a heroin overdose. Also a pussy. Nikki Sixx, immortal, death-cheating, rock god. In his mind, at least. Nikki Sixx, like Tommy Lee, Mick Mars, and Vince Neil, were more like complete degenerates, doing anything at the expense of anyone, even themselves, to live the rock and roll animal life to the fullest. Vince's behavior, of course, resulted in the loss of life of a friend in a stupid and careless accident. And Motley Crue lived hard, so hard that death just wasn't deadly enough. Or maybe they were actually the undead, immortal creatures of the night cheating death from its due. You know, kind of like those rumored Hollywood vampires. Of course, they could have just been batshit crazy and a little bit lucky, insatiable rock and roll animals determined to outlive, outdrug, outbrawl, and outball their heroes. But I don't know. I say it's even odds they were vampires. Has anyone ever seen Mick Mars in the daylight? I haven't. I'm Jake Brennan, and this is Disgraceland. This episode of Disgraceland, its musical score and theme song were written by me, Jake Brennan. Disgraceland is mixed and engineered by Sean Cahalan. Our theme song, Crenshaw Space Boogie, was engineered and mixed by Adam Taylor. Bryce Kanzer, Jay Canava, and Evan Kenny are the mighty talented musicians who performed the theme song with me. Our ad music was written and recorded by the late, great Ian Kennedy. Writing assistance for this episode by Pat Healy. And a big, massive shout out to the inimitable author Neil Strauss, whose book co-authored with Tommy Lee, Vince Neil, Mick Mars, and Nikki Sixx, entitled The Dirt, Confessions of the World's Most Notorious Rock Band, is one of the best music reads you'll ever come across. When it was released, I practically read it in one sitting, and I'm not even really a fan of the band. The Dirt was the main source for this episode and totally worth your time. So if you haven't read it, go to wherever you get your books and grab yourself a copy. And don't sleep on Neil Strauss's newest book, The Truth, an uncomfortable book about relationships that chronicles the underground sex and polyamory scene. Crazy. Neil is an inspiration. Maybe I'll write a book someday. The rest of the sources for this episode are available on my website, as are the sources for all episodes, as they have been since the podcast launched. All right, Lisa Fee, you want a free Disgraceland poster, so hit me up via the email on the website and I'll coordinate getting one out to you. Same goes for you, DJ Pearl. Get in touch for your poster. Thanks everyone for the reviews. They really help spread the word on Disgraceland and help the show grow, so leave a review on Apple Podcasts or hashtag subscribe to Disgraceland on social media for your chance to win a free Avi Spivak Disgraceland poster. Okay, with season 2 now fully launched, we're going back to a bi-weekly schedule. The next episode will be released on July 31st and is on Frank Sinatra, the Mafia, and JFK's assassination. I think it's quite possibly my favorite episode so far, so make sure you and your friends and family are all subscribed to Disgraceland. Seriously, grab their phones, go to their podcast app, search Disgraceland, and bang on that subscribe button. That's what Sinatra would do, and so would Nikki Sixx. As always, go to www.disgracelandpod.com for all Disgraceland info and merchandise, including the new U-Turn Audio custom Disgraceland turntable. Zombie Elvis pins and t-shirts are also available. Talk to us on Instagram and Twitter at DisgracelandPod, and find us on Facebook.com/DisgracelandPod. Rockarola.
He's a bad, bad man.
Love is hard.
But I was so afraid. I could lose everything.
Love is wonderful and confusing and magical and infuriating.
Everything about life that we had thought and planned and hoped for was just in that moment gone.
I was so lucky to have that.
Join the millions of listeners who've made Committed possible. I promise you, it's cheaper than therapy. Listen to Committed on Apple Podcasts, the iHeartRadio app, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Celebrity. He'd found himself. He knew who he was.